Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Connor in for Ian today. Hello, Connor.
What's up, Jared?
TD will join us tomorrow, as today usually joins us 3 o'clock for the Power Hour. But TD was moderating a panel today with Rand Carthon and Paul DeRussell, who is the agent that negotiated the Jeffrey Simmons contract down in Atlanta. So TD will be with us tomorrow, and we'll do that in the 4 o'clock hour, not the 3 o'clock hour, simply because Vandy Baseball will be on when we start tomorrow, so we don't know what time we'll hit the air, but we will have a TD Power Hour this week. So we got to talk about the truth. And there are kind of two different forms of the truth, right? There's the truth and the truth. And in this case, I think there are two different kinds of truths. There are the absolutes. Did the Titans win that week? Yes or no? If they lost and you say they won, you're not telling the truth. And sometimes people know when they're lying. And then there is everybody's own individual truth. Well, I'm going to tell you the truth about Treylon Burks. And I can't tell you what everybody else has for their own individual truths. But this is what I believe is reality. Yesterday, Calvin Ridley came out and said, he's a mixture of A.J. Brown and Julio Jones and T.O., and that was about the 18 millionth positive thing we've heard about Treylon Burks over the last 3 weeks. In fact, I'm not sure we heard anything about Treylon Burks until after the draft, when the Titans didn't draft Marvin Harrison Jr., didn't draft Malik Neighbors, and also didn't draft Rome Odunze, who they could have drafted. Then all of a sudden it was Brian Callahan saying good things about Treylon Burks. Then they signed Tylen Boyd. Then all of a sudden, oh, no, we got a big role here for Treylon Burks. DeAndre said good things. Ridley said good things. Levis said good things. I mean, the way they talk about it, I'd expect 2,000 yards receiving from Treylon Burks. But that's not really the truth. So what the Titans as a collective group have told us with their words is Treylon Burks is the man. This team needs Treylon Burks. This team is relying on Treylon Burks. This team is expecting big things this season from Burks. And he's the same top talent he was when this team traded A.J. Brown for him, and we believe he's going to reach his potential. That's what everybody's telling us collectively. Then there's what their actions this offseason tell us. They're not counting on Treylon Burks. Their actions say, we're not counting on Burks. We just paid one guy $50 million to play the spot that was his last year. We signed somebody else to play the other position that was open at receiver. And thank God we signed DeAndre Hopkins last year, because if we didn't, Burks would have been the only receiver that they had on the roster, and he had 16 catches last year. That's what their actions say. When you go out and get two guys to start at receiver, I don't care how many times you tell me up and down, oh, no, we have big plans for this guy. The proof is in the action, not in the words. And then there's the truth when it comes to Treylon Burks, the reality when it comes to Treylon Burks. And I don't think I'm bursting any bubbles when I say this. I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't know. I think it might just be kind of a recalibration, a reminder of where we really are, and not to get caught up in the May and June optimism of this could be anybody's year. The reality is Treylon Burks has talent. I saw it at the very first practice of training camp in 2022, his rookie year. Not the offseason, the training camp. He took over the first day of practice. It was like, my God, that's the guy they traded A.J. Brown for. And then he had some setbacks. Had the turf toe injury, had to come back off of that. And then he was really starting to come along as a rookie. I mean, he was really starting to make it. Had great games at Green Bay on Thursday Night Football, at home against Cincinnati in a loss, and had a touchdown that basically derailed his season. It's the only touchdown, the only receiving touchdown he has in his NFL career. But it absolutely derailed his career with a concussion on a dirty hit in the Philadelphia game. It sucks for him because that basically ended his season, and he was on the upward trajectory at that point. But then he worked his tush off last offseason, and he looked ready for a breakout season. And I went to training camp, and I went to OTAs, and I saw the chemistry he had with Tannehill, and I was like, hey, this might be a little something here. Then he had the injury in Minnesota in the joint practices. Then he had the massive drop against New Orleans. Then he did have a big catch against the Chargers in there, which again showed he can catch a deep ball. Then he had 3 drops against Cleveland. Then another injury. Then another drop. Then the drop versus Houston on a 70-yard bomb to open the game that hit him square in the hands. In fact, I looked it up this morning. PFF credited him with 4 drops last season, but 0 in a Falcons game. Like it said he had 4 drops last year. He had more because PFF only gave him 4. Albert Breer, that SI piece where Brian Callahan said that he'd take Will Levis over Caleb Williams, in that SI piece, they went over individual plays, and 2 of them were balls that hit Burks in the hands. So he had more than 4 drops. So to say he's unreliable is not a criticism, it's a fact. And the Titans recognize that. That's why the Titans, if this was college football, we would say, recruited over Treylon Burks this offseason. And boy, did they set a mission to do so. $50 million for one guy. They waited it out after the draft for another guy. And the reason they waited on Tyler Boyd is because they thought they might have a chance to draft Malik Neighbors. They didn't think it was likely, but they were going to take Malik Neighbors after Joe Alt went off the board. If the Giants had gone tackle at 6, which I don't see why they would have, but if they had, and Malik Neighbors was there, the Titans would have taken him. Talk about over-recruiting. That being said, again, this is the truth. This is the reality. There is a chance Treylon Burks makes it. This story is not finished with Treylon Burks. He has a 4-year guaranteed contract, just like every other rookie in the NFL that got drafted in 2022. Nobody signs a 2-year contract coming out of there. Nobody signs a 6-year contract. Nobody signs a... You sign a 4-year contract. First-round picks have the 5th-year option. So he's still got 2 years left on his contract. I always see you guys texting the text line, and you guys say, they need to get rid of Malik. Well, money's already guaranteed. What's the point of getting rid of Malik? So in the case of Burks, he's got a 4-year guaranteed contract. And this is where D. Mace, I think, is a great example of what could be. Not what's likely to be, but what could be. Because after his first 2 seasons in the NFL, D. Mace had over 900 catches and over 11,000 yards. His first 2 years, 39 catches, 519 yards. Now, Derek Mason wasn't taken in the first round like Treylon Burks, and the Titans, then the Oilers, didn't trade away their best player, A.J. Brown, in order to get him. They traded away a quarterback they didn't want anymore, Chris Chandler, in order to draft Derek Mason. But still, 39 catches through 2 years. I don't think there were a lot of people at that point in time thinking that Derek Mason was going to be consistently nominated for the Hall of Fame. I don't think anybody thought, as a receiver, that he'd set an NFL record for all-purpose yards in a year. So the story on Burks is not finished. But all this talk about, oh, you watch, he'll be a superstar this year, what is that based on? But again, he still has a chance because guys get hurt in the NFL. We all know, knock on wood, it's highly unlikely that DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, and Tyler Boyd play all 17 games this season. And there is still a chance, like Derek Mason, like Derrick Henry, that Treylon Burks can become the kind of player he was drafted to be. This is that Joe Rexrode. There's a chance. The only problem I have is when the Titans talk about Burks, they're starting to usher in this assumption that that's going to happen. Based off of what? Based off of the fact that, well, the tracking data said that he ran 3,100 yards in practice yesterday. He busted out the top speed of anybody at 22 miles per hour. Those were the same things they told me when I said He fell because he ran a 4.55 in the combine in the 40. And people said, oh, no, the tracking data says that his touchdown against Alabama was the fastest touchdown in college football. He still fell in the draft. He got the benefit of the doubt last year. And it's obvious, based upon their actions, that the Titans aren't giving Treylon Burks the benefit of the doubt this year. If they gave him the benefit of the doubt this year, they wouldn't have signed a $50 million receiver over him. They wouldn't have been flirting around with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors. And they wouldn't have signed Tyler Boyd to come in here to play the slot. So if the Titans aren't giving him the benefit of the doubt, why should we give him the benefit of the doubt? I mean, it wasn't Mike Vrabel's fault. I know everything's Mike Vrabel's fault. Chig made that abundantly clear yesterday. It wasn't Mike Vrabel's fault that Burks dropped the football last year. Just like if he can't catch it consistently, it's not going to be Brian Callahan's fault. So the truth on Treylon Burks, before we get into what anybody says, or what anybody sees at OTAs, or any one play in this, and the truth is, I know a lot of people don't want to hear this because they've talked themselves into Burks over the last 3 weeks. Most people thought Burks was done for when Tyler Boyd got signed, and then Brian Callahan said, no, he's got to roll. And now people have talked themselves into Burks. The truth is, he has been disappointing. The truth is, the Titans are not counting on him this season. But the truth is, he still has a chance. He still has a chance. The cream always rises to the top in the National Football League. And so if Treylon Burks is that guy that the Titans have been banging the table for, DeAndre, Ridley, Callahan, if he's that guy, it'll happen. But this assumption that it's going to happen, we did that last year. Again, 16 catches. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And what really sparked this for me yesterday was I knew what Callahan said a couple weeks ago after they signed Boyd about, oh, no, trust me, Burks has a role. I told him he's a big part of this team. I heard what DeAndre said last week when he was like, you know, I'm not going to give you a sound bite. I'm going to give you the German word for no, or whatever it was. But it was what Calvin Ridley said yesterday. The A.J. Julio T.O. comp. And I'm like, okay, hold on now. This is about to get out of hand. Because as soon as this gets out, it's like, oh, my God, Treylon Burks this year, he's going to be a superstar. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We did this last year. Let's not do it again. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We'll get to that next. Because I do have a thought on the comp. The A.J., the Julio, the T.O., and I don't totally disagree with it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Well, what do you make of Treylon Burks, by the way? What do you make of that? Is that a guy that he's been in the league long enough? Can he play or can't he play?
See, I think he can. Okay. He just has not had consistency in health, and he hasn't had consistency in being able to, because of the health at times, staying on the field and making plays. Plus, they weren't overly consistent at the quarterback position for a while. So you put it all together, like you would watch games and Treylon Burks would make a play or two, and then he'd get dinged. So if he can stay healthy and be that physically imposing guy we saw come out of Arkansas, then you've got something going.
That was Charles Davis on SiriusXM NFL Radio. By the way, Charles Davis has earned his preseason paycheck because he was pumping the Titans' tires all over SiriusXM yesterday or 2 days ago or whenever that was. He was just all over. So much so that his host with him, Bruce Murray, good man, by the way, Bruce Murray had to say, and, of course, you're close to that team because you call their games. And Charles Davis like, yeah, full disclosure, I call their games. Which I did kind of laugh at. But Treylon Burks, he says he thinks he can play. He's just got to stay healthy. I think it's two things. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to catch the ball. Those are the two things. Like, we pretend like he didn't drop the football a crap load last year, and he did. Again, I'm rooting for him. I think he can do it. But history is telling me he probably can't. That's why the Titans signed a guy for $50 million and signed another guy in Tyler Boyd. But Calvin Ridley, the $50 million guy yesterday, made some headlines when he was asked about Treylon Burks and the comparisons that he made with Burks' athleticism.
This dude is a freak. Like, seriously, bro, he's going to be a stud. There's no worries in him. What I see, he's like Julio, A.J. Brown. He's like T.O. Dude that big, that fast, man. I mean, he's a stud, man. You don't got to worry about him. You just got to learn, slow the game down. He's going to be all right.
Calvin Ridley says A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and T.O. That big, that fast. I mean, he's going to be awesome. I don't disagree. I actually agree with Calvin Ridley. I told you guys and have been barbecued for this take, and I stand by it. Treylon Burks, in my opinion, has more natural God-given ability than A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown does not have Julio Jones' vertical ability. Now, A.J. Brown is tougher than Treylon Burks. A.J. Brown, while he does get hurt, is more durable than Treylon Burks because Treylon Burks gets hurt too much. A.J. Brown is more reliable than Treylon Burks. And quite frankly, I think A.J. Brown's just got more dog in him. But what Calvin Ridley is telling you is that Treylon Burks, as a prospect, his athleticism, and again, the God-given ability that is in his body, the things he can do that I can't do, you can't do, he can do. He's not wrong. I've seen it at practice. I've seen it in a couple of the games. He made a career out of it in the SEC. Now, he's always been leaving everybody wanting a little bit more. But Treylon Burks has elite talent. That 2022 draft, where they traded that, they traded I think it was the 18th pick for A.J. Brown. And they ended up drafting Burks. It wasn't like at the time everybody thought it was going to be this 1,000-yard, top 5, carry you to the Super Bowl receiver in exchange for a guy who's going to catch 16 passes. I had a college coach who's been very critical of the Titans over the years text me when they made the move, and he said, why did they trade A.J. for A.J.? Because he thought that A.J. Brown's comp was Treylon Burks. Now, that doesn't mean that when you get to the NFL, you're going to play exactly like the guy. Again, A.J. can catch the ball, which A.J. did have some drops early in his career that were detrimental. 4th down against the Colts his rookie year. But he's not Burks. I mean, he's way more productive than Burks, better than Burks. And A.J.'s got the dog in him that I'm not sure Burks has. Just ask yourself this question. How would A.J. Brown have reacted if the Titans had signed a $50 million receiver over him? I'm not sure A.J. Brown would have reacted very positively. And while there's a blessing and a curse, and the Titans got mad at the way A.J. acted on the way out, that dog in him, very, very important. But as far as, again, God-given natural ability, Burks is there with those guys. maybe not Julio. Julio is elite. Like when we talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., elite as a prospect, that's what we're talking about with Julio Jones. And that's not what Treylon Burks wasn't that elite of a prospect. But talent and potential does not necessarily equal great player in the NFL. Jeff George was incredibly talented. Guy played on like 9 teams. Vince Young, incredibly talented. Vince Young, with bad coaching and a bad supporting cast and bad fundamentals and a bad ability to read the defense and know what was going on. Vince Young, on natural talent alone, made the Pro Bowl, was Rookie of the Year, and led the NFL in fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives as a rookie on talent alone. But every single great player will tell you that it takes more than just raw talent in order to be a great player. I don't care if it's Lamar Jackson. I don't care if it's Lawrence Taylor. I don't care if it's Patrick Mahomes. It takes more than raw talent. The GM used to always say that potential, which again is what Burks could be if he could stay healthy, if he could catch the ball, if he could stay in shape, if he could. But the GM used to always say, potential is French for not good enough. And right now that's where Burks is. And the clock is ticking. And the Titans, they're looking at themselves in the mirror, and I think the Titans did the exact right thing in the offseason by signing over that spot. The Titans are looking in the mirror and they're saying, look, man, we got a young quarterback. We got to figure out if he can play. We got a young quarterback who's 25 years old. We got a fan base that wants to win. We're going to ask people for a bunch of money for PSLs in this new stadium. Like, we're tired of sucking. Like, we need to get results. And you can't bank on Burks getting you the results because, again, you did that last year and you failed. He gave you 16 catches. But as far as the God-given ability, just the natural talent, unless you consider like that dog inside of you a God-given talent, and I don't think it is a God-given talent. I think it's something that's developed starting at, probably infancy and childhood on. But unless you consider that God-given talent, which I don't, we're talking about athleticism, ability to jump, ability to run, Burks has it. And where I don't necessarily agree with the Julio comp is that unlike AJ and T.O. were these receivers that when they caught the ball, they became running backs. And that is an incredibly rare trait, to catch the football and then be like Derrick Henry running down the field with it. That's what Burks can be. Like, that's what he can be. The problem is for 2 years, he's been given a spot based upon where he was drafted, based on that potential, and he hasn't done anything with it. So now you went out and spent $50 million to make up for that mistake, and I don't think you can game plan to try to use that potential when, again, banking on that potential before has gotten the previous GM and the previous coach fired. 615-737-1025. Kyle in Shelbyville says, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, Treylon Burks reminds me so much of Tyrone Calico. That comes from Kyle. So, if I remember Tyrone Calico's career correctly, Tyrone Calico got off to an unbelievable start as a rookie. He was a second-round pick out of MTSU. He was big, and he was tall, and he could run. And he was the fourth guy in a wide receiving core that had Derek Mason as the lead dog and two great, that 2-3 combo, two great guys, and Justin McCarron, who was the number 2, and Drew Bennett, who was the number 3. And Calico was the fourth guy. And they had 2 tight ends. I believe Frank Wycheck was still there, in Wycheck and Aaron Kinney. So there was a great offense that they had rolling with it. Steve McNair won MVP that year. Calico got off to a great start. Then about midway through his rookie year, Calico couldn't catch anymore. Like, a ball hit him in the hand. Where'd that go? I don't. What happened to that? Where did it go? I don't know. And then he really wasn't seen from again, but because of where he was drafted, they put him in the starting lineup when they had to make some cuts. And then I remember there was a Monday Night Football game during the preseason, Roy Williams, when the horse collar tackle was legal. horse-collared Tyrone Calico, broke his leg, and I believe that was the play that led to the banning of the horse-collar tackle. But boy, did Calico have a lot of potential, too. I mean, Calico, his size, his speed. Again, I think he scored a touchdown like his first 5 games as a rookie or something ridiculous like that, and then was never heard from again. So you can have A.J. Brown level talent and not be A.J. Brown. And you can also be a guy who's not uber talented, but because of hard work, smarts, you're able to carve out a career for yourself. Brock Purdy's doing that right now in San Francisco. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Boy, I guess somebody was listening to our show yesterday because we asked a question that, again, I thought was valid, and boy, it got answered quickly. We'll get to that next. And your phones at 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. DeAndre Hopkins not at OTAs today, and somebody texted into the text line and said that DeAndre Hopkins has removed all Titans, pictures off of his Instagram or whatever.
What?
So I do wonder, what do you make of that? DeAndre is in the last year of a deal, and DeAndre is underpaid. So I do wonder what you make of all of that. Could there be some trouble brewing underneath with DeAndre, or could DeAndre just not have been there today?
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case, but that's the one thing that, listen, I'm kind of concerned about just a little bit because, listen, you're dealing with DeAndre Hopkins, you're dealing with Calvin Ridley. Both of the guys want the football. And then you got Tyler Boyd that's in the slot. So now you got a situation. I'm going to give the listeners a scenario. Just imagine it's 4th and 5, the game's on the line, and they throw the ball to Tyler Boyd. How is Calvin Ridley and how is D-Hop going to how are they going to act? Because you know if you're a number one guy, you're going to want the football. You're going to want to make the play at the right time. So that's the only thing that I was concerned because you got two alpha males on the outside that want the football when the game's on the line. And if you look at it, I'm not trying to go back and kind of compare to how we did in 1999. We had some great players. We had myself. We had Derek Mason, who's a great player. We had Kevin Dyson. We had Yancey Thigpen. We had, Bird. The one thing that made that room work is because everybody knew their role and nobody cared. So now you got a whole bunch of dudes in this locker room. You got Calvin Ridley, you got Hop, you got, Tyler Boyd. You got all these guys that want the football. If you don't get the ball, will you make it work and know your role? That's the only thing that I'm concerned about.
That was Chris Sanders yesterday, and I don't think Chris was picking up what I was putting down there, which was, could it be the contract here, DeAndre? We talked about it yesterday. DeAndre Hopkins not at OTAs 2 days ago. And DeAndre Hopkins, somebody texted the text line, say he scrubbed his Instagram of the Titans. And again, the only way you can show unhappiness in today's NFL, you can't hold out anymore if you're under contract. The only way you can show unhappiness is to sit back and take a team off your Instagram and unfollow them and basically pout and not show up to voluntary workouts. So I said, hey, connecting the dots here, what do we make of it? And at $13 million, DeAndre is underpaid. He's 24th in the NFL, tied with Darnell Mooney, who I don't think is very good, and Gabe Davis, who I think is a one-trick pony, a poor man's Calvin Ridley, literally. He's underpaid. So we talked about it yesterday. Boy, people got mad. Oh, my God. The amount of people tweeting out, I wish you'd go back to such and such. Oh, you're terrible. You're speculating. No, duh. It's talk radio. Of course we're speculating. That's who's going to win this week, Terry Bradshaw? That's speculating. It's talk radio. And then all of a sudden, Connor, did you see 2 hours ago DeAndre Hopkins' Instagram account?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting.
So DeAndre Hopkins 2 hours ago posted on Instagram a little slideshow saying glory, just the caption. The first picture is DeAndre walking into the facility. The second picture is DeAndre on the field. The third picture is DeAndre talking to Calvin Ridley. And then the fourth picture is a slide that says, stop trying to impress people with what you owe and start inspiring them with the way you live. Like a T.I. song. So DeAndre Hopkins, after scrubbing his Instagram account of the Titans, after we talk about it, and then it gets picked up, Robbie and Joe are talking about it. I'm sure all the Reddits and the message boards and everything else, all of a sudden DeAndre Hopkins just decides, hey, let me post this photo here on Instagram. Do we think that's a coincidence?
Nope.
But let me say this. I think this has been very well played by DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't even know if DeAndre wants a new contract or not. I'm sure DeAndre wants a new contract. But has DeAndre done anything that would make you think, if you're the Titans, that he's unhappy? In my opinion, no. DeAndre hasn't said anything. DeAndre hasn't made any statements. DeAndre hasn't posted anything. DeAndre hasn't gone all A.J. Brown Twitter fingers. We have no idea if DeAndre is happy with his contract or not. Again, if I was DeAndre Hopkins and I had the season I had last year with the offensive line protecting the quarterbacks that were there, which meant less passes for me, I'd be pretty upset with the fact that I'm making as much money as Darnell Mooney. But you don't hear anything from DeAndre. You don't hear anything out of DeAndre. But now it's being well speculated because it started with me and then it went to Robbie and Joe. And again, I mean, those are the top 2 sports shows in the city in drive time right now. And so then by DeAndre posting the photos, I think it shows it's almost like DeAndre is responding and saying, no, I'm happy here. I like it here. Which might make it easier for him to walk in with the Titans and say, guys, I understand, like, I'm not a $25 million receiver. I'm not. Jalen Waddle just signed for like $28 million a year. I think it was $84.75 over 3. So if Jalen Waddle's a $30 million receiver, I'm a $20 million receiver. I might not be a $25 million receiver, but I'm a $20 million receiver. And I heard the Midday Show talking about this today too. And I heard Derek and Willie saying, why extend him if you don't have to extend him? Why extend him a contract? And I'm sitting here saying, do you want to be Danico Autry? Because Derek was like, well, I would say if he came to me wanting a new contract, I'd say let's wait till the end of the season. You wait till the end of the season, DeAndre has a good year. DeAndre's going to free agency unless you just massively overpay him. Why wouldn't you at least knock on the door and say, hey, what do you think about an extension? And the deal that I talked about was a 1-year deal with a $16 million base salary next year with some incentives. Get it up there. And you're going to pay him $4 million extra this year, and $5 million is guaranteed. Or no, $5 million extra this year, and $4 million of the money's guaranteed next year. So if DeAndre stinks, it costs you $9 extra million. But you're hedging your bet that DeAndre Hopkins, you're using that $9 million to hedge your bets that DeAndre Hopkins is going to have a good season and is still going to be a quality wide receiver going into next season. And I'm willing to make that bet. Because, again, DeAndre's game is not based on speed. Calvin Ridley is a guy who I do worry about how he will age because Ridley's game is based on speed. Hopkins' game is not. Hopkins is slippery, he's elusive, and he's great getting his hands on the ball. Now, he can catch the deep ball, and he can run, but his game's not speed. Like, you go back to some of the deep balls he caught last year. One at Miami, Louis Riddick was screaming at the television or on television about how they should have called an offensive pass interference for DeAndre just kind of secretly pulling the DB's arm back, which I thought was very good. And then the bomb against Atlanta that kicked off Will Levis's career was blatant offensive pass interference, and they didn't call it because, again, DeAndre knows how to do that. Like, he's savvy. So if I'm the Titans, I am hedging my bet on DeAndre so that, again, what happened with Danico Autry doesn't happen with DeAndre. Wouldn't you like to have Danico Autry back on this football team for this season? I would. How much better would you feel if you had Danico? And I think DeAndre is the level of Danico. And I also like the idea of Will Levis growing with his receiving core. Now, at some point, they're going to have to get him a young guy. Either Burks is going to have to pop, or they're going to have to get him a young guy in the draft, and he's going to need, like, his T.Y. Hilton to Andrew Luck, his Marvin Harrison to Peyton Manning. He's going to need a young guy. Even Deion Branch was there for Tom Brady as Brady, was in year 3, 4, 5. Levis is going to need a young guy. But right now, he's got a solid core right there with Ridley for multiple years. Give Hopkins multiple years. You don't need to give multiple years to Boyd. You're good with Boyd on the money he's on. You're fine there. Boyd has a great season. Figure it out later. But I think that this is great news for DeAndre Hopkins that everybody in town, starting with us, everybody in town is talking about, his contract, he's making $13 million. He's making as much as Darnell Mooney. Don't you think he's a... And he doesn't look like the bad guy here because he's not holding out. And when he posts the picture to Instagram in response to all the chatter, it's almost like he is squashing it. He is putting his arms up saying, whoa, no. I am happy to be a Titan. And I'm like, if you're the Titans and you're talking all this sunshine and rainbows and culture and everything else, Isn't that the kind of thing you want to invest in? 615-737-1025. Your phone's on the receivers. We got Burks talk. We got Hopkins talk. We'll get into that. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
Okay, this is something we do from time to time. Top third, middle third, bottom third. This Titans receiver group, where do we project them landing this year overall? And again, it's Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, Calvin Ridley, Treylon Burks.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at it, right, I'm going to say probably middle tier is just like, you know, again, without dissecting this too deeply here and this just coming off the top of your head and me asking, that's kind of my overall thought, right? You know, I think there's maybe potential to be in that top tier, but I think as I look at it and I look at all teams in football, yeah, I probably feel like it's more of the middle tier part of the group. And you know, a little part of that is because, like, hey, Hopkins is a year older. Treylon Burks, will he work out? I don't know. Those are things that are unknown.
There you go. That was Chris Sims saying, hey, that's a middle tier wide receiving group. Boy, there are going to be a lot of you that don't like that. I mean, I hear all the talk about this receiving group. You know, it's the best receiving group I've ever seen. I'm like, yes, but at the same time, there's not like a bona fide number one receiver. Like Calvin Ridley's not a bona fide number one receiver. He wasn't even really the number one in Jacksonville last year. That was Christian Kirk before Christian Kirk got hurt. And so, again, like, I said this when they signed Ridley. I said you're probably, right there kind of in the middle. And, boy, people got mad. Well, I actually said that it was a below average, and then we ranked them, and it was like 17th, which then I said was technically below average. It's right there in the middle. Chris Sims is right. It's right there in the middle. One texter says, so do you like Treylon Burks or do you not like Treylon Burks? Again, here's the truth surrounding Treylon Burks. The truth is he has been a complete and total disappointment thus far. Based on his ability, where he was drafted, who he was traded for, all of that. But he's still got a chance. Because, again, rookies come into the league on a 4-year contract, not a 2-year contract. So I think he's got a lot of potential. But as I quoted earlier, the GM said, potential is French for not good enough. Ben says, if we look at DeAndre Hopkins' contract and give a 1-year extension and are having a rough start to the season, Hopkins would be a better trade asset also, assuming he is still producing. You got to remember, a lot of people look at the NFL trade deadline, they think it's like baseball or hockey. These sports where, well, if we're not in it, let's just trade this veteran player to a team and get a pick and move on. That's not going to help Will Levis. And the reality is this season's about Will Levis. So I am extending DeAndre Hopkins, not to make DeAndre happy, though I hope it does by giving him a little bit of a pay bump, but I'm doing it so that I'm hedging my bets against being Danico Autry, where he leaves and all of a sudden I'm out a really good player because I didn't get off my ass and renegotiate a contract with him when I had the chance. Once you get into the season, he's not going to want to renegotiate because these players and these agents are like, well, we've already made it this far. Let's just finish out the year and get to free agency. You come to them before the year, they'll want to do it because they can get more money up front, and not only can they get more money up front, but also it protects them from the season that's about to happen. Kyle is up next on DeAndre Hopkins. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Kyle?
What's up, Jared? Hey, I'm a big Hopkins fan. He saved our season last year. But
saved it?
Say what?
Saved it? The season was awful.
He made it tolerable to
like
actually
Brock
watch.
Purdy
Yes.
saved the 49ers season 2 years ago. DeAndre didn't save anything. He was still terrible.
He had 1,000 yards, and if he didn't have that, we probably would have won but 1 or 2 games. So
I do wonder what would have happened without. It would have been, it would have been bad without Hopkins. Oh my God!
You got that right. But at first, I wanted to re-sign Hopkins. You know, him and Levis got that chemistry, but I wanted to develop the chemistry of Boyd and what's his name, Ridley. But imagine. You know, he's underpaid, like you said. He's going to want $18 to $22 million a year. He thinks he's worth that. Wouldn't you rather give that to Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, or maybe DK Metcalf or something like that? Just a younger player. I know he's still got game, but I'm looking to get younger and grow with Will, not just a one-year thing. And his health, I mean, he'd get hurt. He's 33 years old. And in 2 years, how good is he really going to be?
Couple of thoughts there. Thank you for your call. Number one. Devontae Adams is not young either, right? Like, it's like, well, we want a young guy to develop with Levis. And at some point, they're going to have to get a young guy. If Levis is going to be the guy, you're going to have to draft the guy that can be his guy. Like, at some point, you're going to have Steve McNair had Derek Mason. At some point, you're going to have that guy for him. But Devontae Adams isn't young either. And you'd have to trade for him. Or he'd have to be cut. And then he'd have to want to play for you. T. Higgins, he would be available, but again, Higgins has some injury history, and obviously Higgins isn't a guy that was thought well enough for you to trade for, so we're going to bank on you being able to sign him in free agency. I'm not sure I necessarily feel great about that. But what you're talking about when you say, well, what giving DeAndre the money, I'm saying that DeAndre comes in at $16 million next year. That the deal that I'm proposing is $9 million in guaranteed money, 5 this year, 4 next year. $16 million salary for next year. If you want T. Higgins, it's going to cost you about $28 million. Like, Jalen Waddle just made it so that every good receiver from here on out is north of 28. Every single one of them. That's why guys like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, those guys are sitting there with their arms crossed saying, hey, you guys go ahead, sign. Waddle's 28.5 or 28.7, whatever it is. Okay, now Brandon Ayuk gets his deal. Okay, Brandon Ayuk's 30. Okay, now Justin Jefferson's what? 34? If they had signed Jefferson last year at 30, he probably takes the deal. But instead, they drug their feet, and now Jefferson's sitting there saying, like, all right, you guys sign all these guys to new contracts, and you guys go ahead with it. So I look at it like if I make that extension, I had $16 million for next year. It's $4 million in guaranteed money. If Hopkins isn't any good this year, I've hedged my bet. It cost me $4 million and a $5 million raise this year, but I've hedged my bets, and then I can just get rid of him, pay him $4 million. You're paying Andre Dillard $3 million this year. And no offense, but when it comes to hedging my bets for future seasons, I feel much better about betting on DeAndre Hopkins than I do betting on Andre Dillard. But I'm hedging my bets here that Hopkins will have a good season and I'll want to continue the chemistry. And again, this idea that, I want Levis to have chemistry with Ridley and Boyd, not with Hopkins. First of all, I want Levis to have chemistry with anybody out there that can catch the ball for the Titans. I don't care who it is. I would prefer, in a perfect world, that it be Burks and Chig that become superstars. But again, I don't think that's very likely. But I want Levis to develop chemistry with anybody. And quarterbacks can develop chemistry with more than just one receiver. I think Peyton Manning had pretty good chemistry with both Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. I think he had good chemistry with Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker. I think Tom Brady had good chemistry with Rob Gronkowski and Wes Welker and Julian Edelman and Troy Brown and Deion Branch. You can do that. It's okay. Plus, as far as Ridley's concerned, I think Ridley is the deep ball guy. Now, he's not going to be like Chris Sanders, where 6 for a season is kind of his thing. But, you're going to want more than that for the money you're paying Ridley. But I think that Ridley is more of your take the top off the defense. Boyd is more of the safety blanket, more of the tight end because your tight end can't catch kind of thing. I think he's kind of more of that. And I think that it is DeAndre is the go-to guy. But it's okay to have chemistry with all three guys. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Again, that's 615-737-1025 here on the program. So, the caller brought up T Higgins. And T Higgins did a podcast and an interview. And he said something that contradicts something else he's said or done twice already. Which makes me think that T Higgins is living out in no man's land. And I'm not sure the Bengals really want T Higgins back. It's late in the player acquisition season. But is T Higgins totally off the table? And I think I've got a package that might get the Bengals' attention. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So, T Higgins did an interview, I Am Athlete. You know, it's a former player podcast kind of thing. It's like a kind of a more national bussin' with the boys kind of thing, you know, former players, and so they get other players, and they talk about, you know, what's going on, and Higgins said he would love to stay with the Bengals. This is the same T. Higgins who has twice requested a trade. In fact, T. Higgins requested a trade. The Bengals put the tag on Higgins at the very beginning of the tag window, just like the Chiefs did with L'Jarius Sneed, because they wanted to trade Higgins, and they wanted to go to the combine with everybody knowing that Higgins was not going to be a free agent. So you'd have to trade. If you want him, you have to trade. And so everybody got to the combine, and they were like, well, look at all these receivers in this draft. I mean, if I trade you a second-round pick so that I can get T. Higgins, then I have to give T. Higgins $30 million a year when I could just draft Keon Coleman. Or I could just draft Jalen Polk or whomever that may be as good as T. Higgins. See, the reason Higgins would love to return to the Bengals is because he probably likes it there. He likes Burrow. He likes Chase. He likes winning. Probably likes Zach Taylor. Those are a lot of good things to like. The reason why he's demanded to trade twice is because he wants to get paid. And it's obvious that the cheap Bengals are not interested in paying him. The Bengals have a very defined history, and technically their general manager is their owner, Mike Brown. They tag, you play on the tag, and then you leave. That's what happened with A.J. Green. And to that franchise, T. Higgins ain't A.J. Green. Again, it's because they're cheap. This is also a nod to the fakeness of the salary cap. Since he could save about $20 million in salary cap space by signing Higgins to an extension, and they'd end up paying him more money, but they'd save that space, but they're not going to do it because they care about the money. They don't care about the cap space. And according to overthecap.com, the Bengals have the 11th highest payroll in the NFL. And they've got a $35+ million check coming down the pipe for Jamar Chase, which will likely come before opening day. And right now, Jamar Chase is due to make $4.8 million this year. So $4.8 million, and instead it's like, well, we're going to sign him to an extension, and that extension is going to go from $4.8 million this year in cash to $36 million with the signing bonus and everything else, $36 million in cash. Which means, let's say they give, according to overthecap.com, let's say they give Jamar Chase the extension, and Higgins is still on the franchise tag. That would give the Bengals the fourth highest payroll in the NFL. The Bengals. You know as well as I do. I'm sure the Bengals understand, like, hey, we lucked out with Joe Burrow. We've got a generational talent. He's the best quarterback we've probably ever had. Certainly the best quarterback we've had since Boomer Esiason. Yes, he's better than Carson Palmer. He is league MVP caliber. He gives us a chance to win the Super Bowl every year. We have to pay him $50 million a year. Jamar Chase is a generational talent. He's a Hall of Fame caliber player. We're going to have to pay him $33 million a year, but we'll do it. The cheap Bengals, they'll suck it up and they'll do it. But they're not going to have the fourth highest payroll in the NFL. They're not the Bills. They're not the Browns. They're not the owners. Again, the Bengals, they're not the owners that are, we're going to write whatever check it takes in order to win. That's not them. Which makes me think, at this point in the year, for most teams, the big money is gone, right? The big money, the L'Jarius Sneed money, the Calvin Ridley money, the big money up front, that's gone for most teams. But the Titans, who've spent $150 million this offseason, are actually still middle of the road in the NFL when it comes to cash spent. I know everybody talks about how great this offseason has been for the Titans. but they're not a top 10 payroll. I believe they're like 14th or 16th or somewhere around there. So they could make another $20 million payment and be okay with it. $25 million, $30 million. Which makes me wonder, what would the package be in order to get T. Higgins? My guess is Cincinnati started looking for a late first-round pick in this previous year's draft or a second-round pick in this year's draft, and they got no takers. Again, why would I do that, an injured, expensive T. Higgins, when I can just draft Xavier Legette? Then they probably said, okay, well, we'll take a second in next year's draft. They still probably don't have any takers. And I would not be interested in giving up T. Higgins, or in acquiring, I should say, T. Higgins for a second-round pick in next year's draft. So what about this package? A package built around Treylon Burks and Tajay Spears. It might be a little late in the offseason for that. We usually don't see these kind of trades in the NFL. Usually the trades occur right before the start of the regular season, if there are going to be any of these kind of trades. And the trades usually don't involve multiple players. When they involve multiple players, it's usually like a guy you don't want on your roster for a guy that somebody else doesn't want on their roster. Like when you traded for Hugo Amadi. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's Dennis Kelly. But what about a package around Burks and Spears? Cincinnati, if they were to make that move, cheap old Cincinnati, they'd save $19 million roughly in cash. And with Treylon Burks, they'd get a receiver that can replace, in the interim, T. Higgins. And they'd get a running back to complement the newly signed Zach Moss and Tajay Spears. And I don't know if you guys remember how Zach Moss plays, but Zach Moss is more of the Derrick Henry type runner than he is the Tajay Spears type runner. Now, I know a lot of you guys love Tajay Spears, so you're probably saying, no. But he's a third-round running back. And you've already got an $8 million running back on the roster in Tony Pollard, and I'm sure you could find another guy to run the football and catch the ball out of the backfield like you had Dontrell Hilliard a couple years ago to pair with Pollard, who can be an every down back. So while you love Spears, you would have to give up something in order to get T. Higgins, but you wouldn't have to give up a draft choice. Now, a lot of you are going to say either, no, we're not giving up Spears. We can't do it. Spears is too important, which, again, if Spears is that important, you're not going to sign an $8 million running back to pair with him. But there's also probably a lot of you that think, well, the Bengals will say no to that. And I'm not sure they will, because I think Cincinnati's in a really tough spot when it comes to Higgins. I don't think they want to pay Higgins. I don't think they want to pay Higgins the $21 million that they owe him on the franchise tag, but they thought it'd be easier to trade him by tagging him and sending him somewhere else than they did letting him go into free agency and losing him for nothing. I think they overplayed their hand. I think they should have traded Higgins before last season. They would have gotten a first-round pick for him. Now, everybody's sitting there saying, I'd rather draft my Keon Coleman than do that. Now, yes, it would lead to a crowded wide receiver room with Hopkins and Ridley and Boyd and Higgins, and Higgins has to play. This isn't like Treylon Burks where we can pretend like he'll have a role, run him out there for 17 snaps. Higgins is going to play. But I think Brian Callahan can figure that out. I'll be willing to let him figure it out if I can get T. Higgins without giving up a draft choice. I'm not sold that the Bengals would say no. So, again, I don't think it's the most attractive offer. I do think that the Bengals would say, we'd really like your second rounder in next year's draft. And I'm not willing to do that. So it might be a short conversation. But I just don't see the Bengals wanting to keep T. Higgins this year. Even on the tag. maybe the Brown family can suck it up, but the fourth highest payroll in the NFL for the Bengals, I don't – that doesn't make sense. So who's to say that T Higgins is not an option even at this point? 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get to your phones at 615-737-1025 on the T Higgins front. Somebody, I think, is going to have to acquire T Higgins. Let's talk Window Nation. Yes, it's Window Nation's semi-annual sale, and it is a big deal. Right now, get 50% off all windows along with no interest for 5 years plus bonus savings when you schedule a consult today. I know Window Nation. I've talked with Window Nation several times. I had them out to my home for the in-home consultation, ended up not doing work with them because they looked at my windows. They analyzed my windows, and they said your windows are great. Like, you don't need to replace them. And that's how I know they're an honest company. I cannot tell you about all the other companies. They're all going to start advertising. They're all going to tell you, hey, when those peak summer temperatures hit, make sure you've got the energy-efficient windows. Window Nation has them too. And they beat the national brands with their prices and the good, better, best, and everything else. And I know this because I have met with Window Nation. So, again, take advantage of the semi-annual sale. 50% off all windows, along with no interest, 5 years, bonus savings as well when you schedule the consult. That's windownation.com, 866-90Nation, windownation.com. Do they have the money to be able to pay T Higgins to, or is T Higgins going to get out there? Because the Titans fans are circling T Higgins.
I already know. We already know Brian Callahan and the Titans fans are coming after T Higgins. He's only from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, right? You know that, right?
Sure.
So, of course we know you guys want him. Can't have him. And if you're going to get him, you're going to have to wait a year because at least the Bengals are smart enough to use the franchise tag on him. So run along, go draft your own players. In the words of Duke Tobin, right, director of personnel for the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm in the habit of building my own teams, not somebody else's team. I'm in the habit of making my team better, not the Tennessee Titans better.
But can the Brown family pay all that money?
What do you mean? They're
paying Joe. They're paying Joe. They're going to pay Jamar. They're paying Brown. They're going to.
It's called the franchise tag.
I know, but that's still. I mean, that's still like $26 million or whatever it is, and a new deal for Jamar Chase is probably going to cost.
I'm
$50
telling you,
million
yes,
up front.
but you keep asking the same question. Yeah, they can afford to pay him for 1 year under the franchise tag. I already said that. Can they play him the long-term contract? That remains to be seen.
That was Solomon Wilcox with us at the Super Bowl, and again. T. Higgins says he'd love to stay with the Bengals, but the Bengals have not been interested in engaging in contract talks. And when the Bengals use the tag, normally they let somebody play on the tag and then leave. But I think Cincinnati's been trying to trade Higgins. And I just think that nobody's meeting the asking price. And so it's like, well, what are we going to do? And because they have to pay Jamar Chase, I'm not convinced that they're going to want to keep him. So I have thrown out the idea. Treylon Burks and Tajay Spears for T. Higgins, and then you have to give Higgins let's see, what did Waddle sign for? 3 years, 84, and that was an extension. So I think it was 84.75 divided there. 28 and a quarter is what Jalen Waddle went for. So at $27 million over 5 years, you're looking at 5 years, $135 for Higgins. Now, I don't know if the Titans can afford to pay that. I mean, the Titans have a middle-of-the-pack payroll, but the Titans are not the richest team in the NFL. Okay? We know that. But at the same time, we're talking about T. Higgins. And there is, while I am happy with the receivers the Titans have right now, I'm content, I should say, with the receivers the Titans have right now. At the same time, there is a part of me that says, yes, but. Boyd's older and on a 1-year deal. Hopkins is older and currently on a 1-year deal. And so the other thing I'm thinking in my head is this. Cincinnati's in win-now mode, and trading Higgins would make them worse. Hopkins makes $13 million. Could Hopkins be part of the deal that ends up landing you Higgins? And then would you want to do that? Again, you were the guys that, during the year when the season was just a disaster and a complete tire fire, and you guys kept telling me $100 million in cap space, Jared. And all you guys kept talking about was T. Higgins. And I kept saying T. Higgins is going to get tagged. You may have a shot at getting T. Higgins. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Chip from Mount Juliet says, one of the worst takes you've ever had. By the way, let me say this. Now, I know Chip in Mount Juliet listens every day because he texts every day. But I think I get 7 of these a day. That's the worst take you've ever had. I can't keep doing that every day. At some point, one take has to be worse than another. It can't just constantly be the worst every day. But that's what Chip says. He says Higgins is not in consideration here. They've already invested enough at that position. And Burks replacing Higgins in Cincinnati. He's barely even the 4th string here, Chip says. The big get for Cincinnati is Spears. Burks is somebody to get in there. They've got receivers in Cincinnati. They drafted 2 last year. And when they drafted 2 last year, I thought they were going to try to turn around and trade Boyd. They ended up playing through the year with him. I think Cincinnati would probably say no, but I'm not sold Cincinnati would say no on Spears and Burks. But if you want to make it Hopkins and Spears, maybe get a pick back, something, I'd be okay with that. Because, again, there is not a young guy. And Higgins isn't young, but Higgins is in his prime. There's not a young guy at receiver on this roster that projects to be kind of Levis's go-to guy unless you're still holding out hope that Treylon Burks can be the guy to replace A.J. Brown. And I'm not doing that. Caleb says, I don't think Cincinnati would take that package. They would probably get some sort of valuable draft picks that they would want over those players. except they haven't gotten it yet. Like, it's easy to say draft picks. You know, Barry Trotz brought this up last time we talked to him. I think it was last week. And I was asking about the Predators have 5 second-round picks over the next 2 years. And I said, are you going to draft 5 players in the second round, or are you going to trade some of those picks away? And he indicated that he's probably going to trade some of those picks away. And he said in the NHL, the first-round pick has become so valuable to these teams, they don't want to trade their first-round picks, that the second-round pick is now the pick that is used to acquire players, you know, rental players that are solid around the deadline. That if you're trading a first-round pick, you better be giving up a big-timer or getting a big-timer in return now. Didn't used to be that way. David Poyle traded away a first-round pick for Ryan Hartman. In the NFL, the currency of draft picks, because of the rookie wage scale, the currency of draft picks has probably never been higher. Like, I don't want to trade away draft picks. I'd rather trade away Tajay Spears than trade away draft picks. Now, we're talking 5th and 6th. I'll give you that. But, I mean, they're going to want a real choice. And nobody has been interested in paying the Bengals ransom for T Higgins. Because they all look at it and say, you know, all these receiver drafts every year, it's like, this is the best receiver draft. And the next year, it's the best receiver draft. And so on and so forth. Every single year. One texter says, the Titans aren't getting rid of Spears in his second year. He's liked too much by Carthon and the staff. Higgins has a lot of injuries. The Titans wouldn't trade for him. I don't know if like, you know, Rand Carthon told a story on Bussing with the Boys, and I wasn't exactly sure what I made of it. You know, it was kind of, Rand was trying to tell the story of, you know, when I put my foot down and make a decision, I make a decision. And it was on the Spears pick. And what he said on Bussing with the Boys, and by the way, we got to talk about Bussing with the Boys here at some point, because I'm concerned. But what Rand said when on Bussing with the Boys was he had asked a team for the pick for Spears, a team had called him, and he had said, okay, this is what I want in exchange for that pick. And the team said no. And then when the Titans were on the clock, they called back and said, we'll do the deal. And Rand had said, I've already put my foot down. I've already got Spears on the phone. And I'm thinking to myself, if you were willing to make that deal at the beginning, why would you not be willing to make it at the end? Like, again, you've got the charts and everything out there. The chart, if the chart tells you when you get on the clock that you're willing to do that trade for Spears, why at the end of it would you not be willing to do it? And, like, I like Tajay Spears' game, but I'm not sure Tajay Spears is special, right? You don't add an $8 million running back to complement your running back if he's special. Who have the Titans used over the years to complement Derrick Henry? Ever since Derrick Henry became the lead dog. When Derrick Henry became the lead dog, I mean officially the lead dog, they cut Dion Lewis. Since then, the guys to roll with Derrick, Jeremy McNichols, Dontrell Hilliard, Deontay Foreman. They're Scarbinis. You paid $8 million to go with Spears. So I'm not sold that Spears is like a superstar. And he's certainly not at an overly valuable position. And see, I actually think Spears would be a great fit in Cincinnati because Zach Moss is their main running back. LD from McMinnville says, you're constantly on Titans fans' asses. That is true. Now, here you are talking about a fantasy fanboy trade possibility that will not happen. Based off of what? Based off of your assumption that the Bengals wouldn't want to do that deal, or based upon the assumption you won't want to do the deal? See, the thing about a trade is, the thing about any real negotiation, is that the sign of a good negotiation is when both sides are unhappy. When both sides walk away from the deal and say, I did the deal, but I don't love it, that's the sign of a good deal. I got people in the text line that are lining up saying, oh, no, we can't trade away Spears. And then I got people in the text line that are saying, that's the stupidest trade I've ever heard of. Again, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. I think that's probably a fair trade. If you were to say, what is the next year's pick value for Spears and Burks? A second? That's what's Cincinnati looking for Higgins? They're looking for a second-round pick. They know they're not going to get a first-round pick. They're looking for a second. I mean, Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk even brought up the idea in the article in which they talked about Higgins going on the I Am Athlete podcast saying, I'd love to come back with the Bengals, but apparently he and the Bengals are not negotiating, saying that they could rescind the tag. Higgins does not have to show up to anything to collect the full 21 million, 25 million, whatever it is. He doesn't have to show up to a single thing. No OTAs, no mandatory minicamp, no training camp. He can show up the day of, I think it's Tuesday of the opener, and collect the full amount of money. If you're under contract, you got to go to mandatory minicamp or you get fined. You've got to go to training camp or you get fined. Higgins doesn't have to do any of that. But at any point, if he doesn't sign it, they can rescind the tag. And so it is, and it's something that Florio floated out there because, again, the Bengals are cheap, and they're going to have to write Jamar Chase a $35 million check, and they have already committed to that. They've already said that's what they want to do. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Coming up next, I do have to at least kind of get this point out there because it is something that we got to talk about the boys on Bussin' with the Boys because I'm worried they're headed down a road that is going to make them useless to anybody who's not just a total bobo. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
what's the expectation we should be having for the Titans? Are we winning it all this year? Is this it?
I tell our guys.
Should I tell Jack and Garrett back there, who've been Titans fans since the inception of Tennessee, that we're going to win the Super Bowl?
I tell our guys all the time that we don't make any predictions or promises. So I certainly can't step out here and
that's good media.
And say
that's good media
anything
right
other
there.
than that. I will say this though, I am excited about what we've done, the players we've added. I think they're all, we added with Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd and D Hop coming back and Tony Pollard mixing him with Tajay Spears, and you get a chance to draft J.C. Latham, and you got year 2 for Peter Skoronski, and now you go sign Lloyd Cushenberry at the center. Like, I feel like there's some really exciting pieces that, if we can put it all together, I think we have a chance. And obviously I believe in Will Levis. It's a large reason why I took the job, is that I think he's capable of being a really good player. And he has not disappointed so far in the offseason program. He's fantastic. Does everything you ask the way you want it. And I'm excited to see what we have. I'll leave it at that. I think we can put together a competitive football team.
There you go, bussing with the boys. Brian Callahan, boy, they got all fired up. They had Brian Callahan, they had Rand Carthon on the bus. The boys, yeah! And I got to tell you, I listened to both interviews, and it felt a little too chummy, necessarily for my liking. But look, I'll give Bussing with the Boys credit. They decided, hey, we want to start a podcast, which all these athletes have podcasts, former athletes have podcasts. I'm not somebody that looks down on a podcast. I just think that a podcaster and a radio host aren't the same thing. And that, to do 4 hours a day, every day, and take calls, and that I think is harder than just inviting people on and interviewing them, which is what pretty much every podcast person does. But I don't have a problem with podcasting, and it is, a lot of people use it. But what I do think I'm a little skeptical of is what I feel is the path that Bussin' with the Boys is going down, which is they're becoming, in my opinion, too homerific. It's like, I understand if you work for the Titans, and they don't work for the Titans. I understand if you work for the Titans. If you go to work every day at St. Thomas Sports Park, if you wear Titans team gear, that everything that you say or do is going to have a pro-Titans slant. And that is not unique to the Titans. That is where we are headed. That is where the team media guys, that's how it is. If you fly on the team plane, you say good things. It wasn't always that way, but that is where it is now. And I think we just have to accept it. Jim Wyatt, and I love Jim Wyatt. I think Jim Wyatt, if Jim Wyatt were to leave the Titans and get back in the game, he'd be the best reporter probably in this region covering an NFL team. The old Jim Wyatt at the Tennessean was a bulldog reporter. The guy never slept. He was always on the beat. He goes to the Titans, it's not the same thing because he's working for the Titans. He wrote in his mailbag. Somebody asked him a question about Vrabel after he got fired, and they said something like, I know you can't say the truth, Jim, but, and Jim was like, well, I try to tell it like it is, but there are some things I'm not going to say because I don't want to be like Mike Vrabel and get fired. And I laughed out loud when he said it. But they work for the Titans. The Bussin' with the boys don't work for the Titans. And yet, I think it's getting a little too chummy. LaJuan tweeted out 4 hours ago, quote, the last 2 weeks we've had the Titans head coach and GM on the bus. Culture in the building seems next level. I know the Texans are the team to beat in the AFC South, but don't sleep on the boys in blue. Sleeper team of 2024. And I'm like, do you really believe that? Do you really believe that? And I understand the idea of having an opinion on Monday. Johnny Joe stinks. And then Johnny Joe goes out and drops 65 points. And it's like, well, maybe Johnny Joe doesn't stink. So I understand changing your mind on things. But just the anger that the boys had at the idea of Mike Vrabel getting fired. To now where it's the vibe's back, the culture's back, the boys are back, the season's back. I'm like, they won you over that easily? This was LaJuan on Kay Adams' show right before the Titans fired Vrabel in January.
let's just play the hypothetical game. Let's say Mike Vrabel's relieved of his duties.
Wow, Taylor's going to play the hypothetical game.
Yeah.
Let's go.
There's not a chance in hell that every team that has fired their coach is not interested in Mike Vrabel. That'd be the Falcons, that'd be the Panthers, that'd be the Chargers and the Raiders, that'd be the Bears, that'd be literally everybody.
Yeah.
I know the Raiders and the Bears haven't made their decision yet, but Mike Vrabel is that type of dude. The Patriots would also be a big key one, have their prodigal son come back home after being inducted in the Player Hall of Fame. But I think it would be a massive disservice to the city of Nashville.
A massive disservice to the city of Nashville. Oh, you can't fire Vrabel. Oh, you can't. Now, yeah, sleeper team, boys. You see what I'm saying? It reminds me of an early state I was in my career. And the further removed these guys get from their time in the NFL, the less access they'll probably have to guys they played with. You know, Derrick Henry is a must-listen-to interview on the bus, but that's because they're teammates with Derrick Henry. Well, 5 years from now, there won't be any of their teammates still left in the NFL. And so you'll have to make kind of the same relationships everybody else will have to make. And the point I guess I'm making here is I remember early on in my career, this was 2014, I was in Louisville. And we had a big executive, former executive from ESPN. He was in town. He was kind of the guru. And he and I talked a lot about, talk radio. And, he was kind of, okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Meeting about how to do it and everything else. And we talked about how, hey, the best shows are the shows that challenge the teams. The best shows are the shows that tell it like it is. And the next day, some random player was transferring off of Louisville's basketball team, and I saw myself at the fork in the road. My co-host at the time, Drew Diener, said, yeah, Okoye Gal transferred today. I don't think that's that big of a deal. And I said, no, it is a big deal. At this time, Kentucky had that unbelievable, incredible team that lost to Wisconsin that was undefeated and lost in the Final Four. And I said, look at the players Calipari has. Karl Anthony Towns, Trey Lyles, Devin Booker. And Rick gets these Scarbini recruits in here, and then they don't work, and it's like, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, when's Rick, I'm talking about Pitino, when's Rick Pitino going to get these players? And I saw myself at a fork in the road right then and there, and I said, okay. Again, there's a lot of people I knew at the time that were working at Louisville that I had worked with when I was there. I was 2 years removed from having been a student there, having worked in the athletic department there, having been a part of a team there. And I'm like, okay, I have a choice. Either I can keep it real or I can appease my buddies. Which one do I take? And I decided I was going to keep it real. That was a monumental day in my career because I decided I was going to keep it real. And I kept it real. Some people got mad. Some people called in and said, I agree, Pitino's got to step it up. After the show was over, the executive, formerly at ESPN, said, that was awesome. That was incredible. That was great radio, great content, great topic discussion, driving it, just great, great, great. I got a call from Louisville the same day. Yeah, there's some people not very happy with what you had to say, I'll tell you. But I had to pick. And this is the route that I've decided to go. The keeping it real route. And I feel like with Bussin' with the Boys, look, they're going to cover the Titans because they live here. But there is kind of a fork in the road as you get out of the game, which is, are you going to keep it real? Or are you going to be another house organ and cheerlead for the team? And so if I have a vote, I root for them to tell it like it is. My guess is it's probably more fun to be a house organ and be friends with everybody and all that. That's probably more fun, but I just don't have it in me. I just don't have it in me to make up things that aren't true and convince myself that they're true and then tell them to all of you. I can't do it. And that's going to lead to a lot of times where I go on these rants because I get mad about monumental decisions that are made that are going to last 2 or 3 years. And I'm going to bitch about it every day like John Hines with the Predators coaching them. And you're going to say that, Oh, I can't handle I had to turn it off because it's so. I'm just keeping it real. And you guys know. I was in the 4th grade. I mean, on a Titan Sunday, I'm not sitting there saying, hey, I hope they lose in magnificent fashion so that the radio show tomorrow will have loaded phone lines and everybody will be. No, I want them to win. I want my team to win. But again, we keep it real. That's what we're always going to do. And so, again, like when it comes to bussing with the boys, I get it, man. It's cool to be liked by everybody. It's cool to dapping up the coach and dapping up the GM. And I made a decision a long time ago that there were going to be boundaries between me and the coaches and the players and the GMs and the ADs. Because at the end of the day, this is my job. I think I've told this story on the air before. I can't remember if I have or I haven't, but Andrew Burnett got hired as the coach of the Predators. And about 2 weeks afterwards, I was flying through Fort Lauderdale, coming back from vacation. And Andrew Burnett was on the same flight I was on. I saw him at the gate. So I went up to him, said, hey, you were on my show, the day you got hired, whatever. And we chatted at the gate. And I was talking about, I'm the kind of guy around town that, if I don't like something, I'm going to say it. So just know, hey, here's my phone number. You got a problem, call me. And if you want to hash it out, we can hash it out. I'm not going to say, coach called me and yelled at me about whatever. You may not like what you're going to hear, but if you've got something to say, you can say it. And, he was, oh, yeah, no, I understand. And his wife looked at me and she goes, are you pre-apologizing? And I said, it's like those relationship books that talk about setting boundaries and expectations. That's all I'm doing here. I'm not going to be friends with GMs, coaches, and players because if I do that, then it's going to suck when I have to rip their tushies. And I'm going to do it because that's how I am. And so, look, I know not everybody's going to be me. I know that there are some people that do like the affirmation stuff because that's why Fox News and MSNBC are as popular as they are. It's all affirmation. Turn to one channel, Trump's guilty. The other channel, Trump's innocent. Okay, I get it. But if you do that, if you become the affirmation media, then I can't take you seriously. And I think Bussin' with the Boys can do better than that. I think they can keep it real. So that's just kind of my 2 cents there. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Speaking of the boys, there was something Rand Carthon said that I think they think is true, but it's probably not. We'll get to that coming up next. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical here on this program. I love Hiller. Boy, I'll keep it real with you about Hiller. Whenever you need work done on your home, have you ever had a contractor come to your home and you feel like it takes forever and like you've wasted the whole day? Yes. And I can keep it real with you right now that that's not going to happen with Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Because what I do is I go to happyhiller.com, pull it right up on my phone, just set an appointment. It takes less than 5 minutes, honestly, to set an appointment, get the confirmation instantly, and then when they're on their way, it's a 2-hour window, and they call you and they say, hey, so-and-so's on the way, and they give you the map so you can see where the car is, you can see how far away they are. For me, I do early in the mornings whenever I have them come out. It's like, better, put some clothes on because he's 15 minutes away. That is what I love about Hiller. Be a happy camper this month with 0% interest financing for 24 months on select HVAC systems, generators, and tankless water heaters. Or take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning special. Take care of your home systems before the peak summer temperatures hit and visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters, the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face truck today.
How was that transition for y'all? How those discussions, for what you can say?
I'd say it was tough. That day was really tough. I'll speak personally. It was one of those, and this is just being full transparent. When it happened, I called my wife and I was like, hey, like this just happened. And the first thing my wife says is, you need to call Rhea, which is my daughter. And I'm like, why? She was like, because she doesn't need to hear that coach got fired from one of the kids in school, because my kids don't have social media. And so my daughter had a really close relationship with Mike. And if you look on her screensaver on her phone right now, it's a picture of her and Mike, and that hasn't changed. And so, not only to have that happen to him, but to now I got to communicate this to my daughter, and then to have he's now 7-year-old son who he thinks he's the GM and the owner and the head coach. He legitimately, when he got out of school, my wife told him, and he was like, what are you doing? Like, my son said this to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it was tough.
That was Rand Carthon on Bussin' with the Boys. And that makes it sound like, wait a minute, all that drama about Vrabel and Rand, and that must not be true at all, right? I started the show after I listened to that interview. I said, did he want to fire Mike Vrabel? Because it sounds like he didn't want to fire Mike Vrabel. His kid's like, why'd you fire Uncle Mike? But that doesn't mean that there wasn't beef, right? But Will Compton tweeted out, I think it was yesterday, promoting the podcast, which again, he's promoting his stuff. I use my social media to promote my stuff. I get that. But he said there were a lot who thought they weren't on great terms. Talking about Vrabel and Rand Carthon. But after hearing his perspective on everything, you can tell, Will Compton says, that everything was blown out of proportion. That makes sense based on what Rand says, but that's probably not true. And I say that because everything that was coming out at the time didn't just pop out of thin air. Michael Lombardi, who is very much a pro-Vrabel voice, he was the guy that broke the news that the Titans had asked Kevin Byard to take a pay cut. He was the one that kind of started it, and then I slam dunked it. But he was the one. He's got sources. He's been in the NFL for forever. And so Lombardi, this was Lombardi in January, talking about the Titans and Vrabel. And again, Lombardi probably has the ear of Vrabel. Or actually, Vrabel probably has Lombardi's ear. Here's what Lombardi was saying in January.
Tennessee is an interesting place because, there is conflict within the building. And there's no doubt. Everybody's now reporting it.
Yeah.
All right?
You've been saying it earlier, yeah.
And Vrabel has 2 years left on a deal. Vrabel's represented by Neil Cormich, who's a Cleveland-based attorney. And he's also representing Bill Belichick. So there's a lot of conversation. Well, Vrabel, can he move? Can they trade him to New England? I truly believe that the Tennessee Titans ownership group is smart enough to realize they have something very good in Mike Vrabel. And I think they got to find a way to make that to make him comfortable, whatever that is. This team is bad. This offensive line is atrocious. They really have some real issues. And the issues are, how good are they in the front office? And is Carthon and Vrabel going to be able to coexist together? I think that's got to be something talked about. They want to keep Vrabel, but I think Vrabel's not happy with the setup that he has.
He was telling you, again, who do you think he's talking to when he's like, I hope they're smart enough to know what they have in Vrabel? He's talking to Vrabel. And so when he's telling you, Carthon and Vrabel, it's not working out. They got a front office problem. And remember all the reporting that came out of Boston? Greg Bedard, Ben Volen, about, Vrabel and Carthon, sources say, aren't seeing eye to eye. Where do you think that came from? Joe and Diana reported in The Athletic when Vrabel got fired that Vrabel went to Amy Adams Strunk and said when they hired Rand, let's make him assistant GM, not GM. If that got to Joe and Diana, you don't think that got to Rand? So Rand says a lot of things, right? Like, oh, yeah, he knew Atlanta was going to draft Michael Penix. And Brian Callahan got his top choice for every assistant coach. Says a lot of things. It's hard for me to think that that's actually true. It's hard for me to think that Rand Carthon was that torn up when they fired Mike Vrabel, and that the idea of Rand and Mike not seeing eye to eye was blown out of proportion. I remember when TD wrote the article at ESPN.com about how he sat down with Rand and Mike during the year when all of that was bubbling up, and Rand and Mike said that they weren't, that they were, holding hands in lockstep, that they were getting it done together and all that. And TD was like, unless they lied to my face. And it's like, well, like the Titans don't always tell the truth now. So I understand like where Will Combs come from saying, well, after talking to Rand, clearly he and Vrabel didn't have any. Yeah, but that didn't really track with everything that had led up to all of that. It's convenient now, but it's like Jeff Fisher. Jeff Fisher hired Norm Chow, who was Matt Leinert's offensive coordinator, to be the offensive coordinator of the Titans. He wanted to draft Matt Leinart. 10 years later, told everybody he wanted to draft Jay Cutler. That's convenient now, Jeff Fisher. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you tune in for the TD Power Hour, a reminder that'll be tomorrow at 4 o'clock here on the program, here on Stillman and Company. Coming up next, boy, Chig Okonkwo and Arden Key threw Mike Vrabel under the bus. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
ESPN Bet is ready to take you through all the huge sporting moments this spring and after next week this summer. It's the exclusive sports book at ESPN, and it has it all, including offers and promotions from Scott Van Pelt and Stephen A. Smith. From the playoff intensity to getting on the links and out to the ballpark, there's no better time to be a sports fan than right now. As a new user, you get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. So download ESPN Bet today. What a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For problem gambling support, call or text TN Redline 800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. See the app for details.
Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So, I don't know if this is too much information or not. I don't know if you guys care. So, about 2 weeks ago, I got a TV in my bathroom. It's a 24-inch, so it's not very big. But, again, you know, it's for the bathroom. Sits on the counter. It was $60 on Amazon, and it's been the best. I can watch games in the shower. I can, you know, in the bathtub, and if I'm, you know, it's great. So apparently Wednesday morning I was watching on YouTube Robbie and Joe when PK was in studio, and then I just turned it off and went on with my day. Well, today I turned the TV on, went to YouTube actually to go listen to Caroline, Willie, and D-Mace, and when I did, it still had the episode of Robbie and Rex showed up. And so I, you know, whatever, I listened to the end of PK, and they were talking before yesterday's OTAs about what players the Titans were going to make available. They're like, all right, what players are not risky as far as saying something controversial? Oh, no, can't do him. He might be hurt. Oh, no, can't do him. He's got the contract. Oh, no, can't do him. And the guys, they ended up, you know, kind of expecting. They're like, well, it's probably going to be one of the new players like Awuzie. And it was. And then Paul at one point, they're like, well, it could be Chig. And it was. So both Chig Okonkwo and Arden Key yesterday made comments that could be seen as subtle in Chig's case or not so subtle in Key's case as digs of the Mike Vrabel way. This was Chig yesterday at the podium after practice.
Yeah, first start is always good, especially, you know, when you're coming off of, you know, losing and all that. So a first start's always good. The buildings, the vibes are, you know, immaculate right now. You know, they're great. So we just want to keep building on that, and just the future is exciting for us right now.
You mentioned the vibes are immaculate. Where can you tell that? Where does that maybe show up on the practice field or maybe in the locker room?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like guys are just more relaxed, you know, now with our building. I feel like guys come in and they're not as tense, not as stressed out. And it just, you know, allow people to be a lot more free in the locker room. I mean, we always were free in the locker room, but there's a lot more free on the field. I think we're going to see a lot of that this year.
Do you have an example of that freedom? Just like how is that manifesting itself?
Example of it? I mean, it just, you know, coming in and being, I feel like just coming in and being yourself, not feeling like you need to, you know, minimize yourself, what you're doing, just coming in and fully being you.
Oh, the vibes are immaculate in the building. It's wonderful. It's great. We can be ourselves now. We don't have to conform the Vrabel way. Meanwhile, Arden Key was talking to Paul on the side after practice, and he was talking about Denard Wilson and about how Denard Wilson, hey, they fix mistakes before they move on. PK asked, did you not do that with the former staff?
Did you move on before some details were fixed in the past?
Hell yeah. Yes, we moved on. If we messed up, we didn't fix it. And now this year, when we mess up, we don't move on until we fix it. So, yeah.
How dare they? Shane Bowen, what a dope. Boy, I tell you, Titan fans probably love that. See, Jared, the Mike Vrabel way was atrocious. Listen to Chig talk. Listen to Arden Key. Let me say this. I was the one who was calling for Vrabel's firing. I think Mike Vrabel hates me. But the narrative of Mike Vrabel was the worst, it's starting to get out of hand. And honestly, it's embarrassing. Because Mike Vrabel was a good coach. Okay? Was it time for him to go? Yes, it was time for him to go. But Mike Vrabel was not Ken Wisenhunt. And it's starting to seem amongst the fan base and now even the team that, oh yeah, big bad Vrabel. He's the problem with everything. Chig loves the comfortable vibe. I hope it helps him catch the ball this year. He only dropped it 6 times last year on 10% of the passes thrown his way. I'm glad Chig likes the vibes. Maybe it will help him catch more than 1 touchdown pass this year. 1 touchdown. The last guy I care about in terms of enjoying the vibes is Chig Okonkwo. This year and last year, just gifted a starting position. But yeah, well, I'm glad Chig's comfortable. And then Arden Key and what he said about, hey, last year if we didn't correct something, we just moved on. And this year we correct the mistakes. Guys, I find it incredibly hard to believe that Mike Vrabel didn't correct mistakes. And while Shane Bowen ran the defense last year, we all know, it's been well documented, Mike Vrabel was very hands-on. Vrabel's a control freak. So you mean to tell me that Mike Vrabel, who was always quick to blame everybody except for himself all the time, just ignored mistakes? That Vrabel would watch the tape, see a guy not go to the right spot, and Vrabel wouldn't go in the meeting room and bust that guy's ass over it? You really think Mike Vrabel let that slide? I can see the idea of Mike Vrabel annoying the crap out of somebody by harping on a mistake too much. But to just ignore the mistakes? Come on now. Vrabel thought he had earned the right to be GM on top of being coach. You think he didn't care when a mistake happened? We've all been around lazy workers before. We've all been around incompetent people before. I'm sure a lot of us have worked for incompetent managers before. You know somebody that just lets it, wings it, and doesn't care as compared to Mike Vrabel. You know Mike Vrabel wasn't like that. But see, this is what happens every time a coach gets fired. And the fact that some Titan fans can't recognize it and apparently players on the team can't recognize it is honestly disappointing. Because if you fire a mean coach, you always hire a player's coach. You always hire the opposite of what you had. The Titans had a mean defensive coach, so they replaced him with a nice offensive coach. Every team always does that. You replace the lazy guy, Butch Jones, the bullcrapper, with the hard-ass Jeremy Pruitt. And if you hire a player's coach or you fire the player's coach, you're going to hire a disciplinarian. Happens every time. But again, in this instant, like the idea, in this instance, the idea that Mike Vrabel wasn't a good coach and that it just hadn't run its course and it was time to move on to the next guy is really not fair, and it's just not accurate. Right now, everybody seems to be acting like Mike Vrabel was the root of every problem, and that the geniuses calling the shots now are perfect, and that logic is ridiculous. It's just not crazy. The truth is in the middle all the time. This coaching staff is great. Everybody tells me how great this coaching staff is right now. This coaching staff the Titans have put together will be better next year than it is this year. Because what's going to happen is Brian Callahan will weed out guys that he doesn't think are good assistant coaches. I can promise you right now, not every assistant coach they have is a good assistant coach. But Brian Callahan hasn't worked with all these guys, and Brian Callahan is now managing these guys. And what's going to happen is the guys who are really good coaches, Brian Callahan's going to keep, and the guys who are bad coaches, Brian Callahan's going to get rid of. So it'll be better next year. But please stop with the, it's so great right now. These assistant coaches. It's incredible. Vrabel was so bad. Callahan's so great. I like Brian Callahan for where they are right now. He's starting to pump a little too much sunshine. You know I don't like that. But I like Brian Callahan because he's the guru coach. The offensive guy who calls the plays. He's from the McVay tree. That's what I want for a young quarterback that's developing. I don't think Mike Vrabel's a good fit for a young quarterback that's developing. But there's a far cry from I don't think Mike Vrabel should be the coach to he's the worst. Thank God he's gone. See, Chig said the vibes are great in the room. See, Arden Key said that terrible coaching staff last year didn't go over mistakes. They didn't. On defense? On Vrabel's defense? Really? Now, if you want to tell me that the offensive line coaching is a 180 from last year to this year, because all I saw at training camp last year, turbo, and they hit the pad. If you want to tell me that, yeah, okay, I'll give you that at the offensive line position with the guru coaching that. But to act like Mike Vrabel was a terrible coach, that's ridiculous. The guy got you to playoffs 3 times. We went to an AFC title game, 2 divisions. I mean, and again, the biggest move the Titans made that probably has affected them over the last handful of years, we all know, is the A.J. Brown trade. Vrabel made his feelings on that trade known very quickly. He didn't like it. So stop, just be happy with what you have, but stop throwing the other guys under the bus. Because I can promise you they weren't that bad. You won a lot of games with them. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, and I just don't believe that Arden Key stuff. I just don't believe it. 615-737-1025. Speaking of Chig, there is something about Chig that's honestly bothered me. And I'm going to get it off my chest. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Let's talk Twice Daily. Twice Daily, you know I love Twice Daily. I go there all the time. They've got your cravings. And you can save on every visit to Twice Daily. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discounts, savings, enter their sweepstakes, and so much more. Try their new wraps, the Italian, the ham and cheddar, the turkey and Swiss, and the Nashville hot chicken. And they are made to order with your favorite toppings. And when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Or at Twice Daily, it is snack time all the time. And they've got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, new pretzels, and more. So get your tush into Twice Daily. Download the app. Get your made-to-order stuff. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
Anything change with you as far as how you're prepared for OTAs, putting on more weight, changing your diet, do anything different than you've done during the first couple of years?
I don't think I've really done much different, but for me, it's really I wanted to change like the way my body moved this off season. So I was doing a lot of stuff like that in Florida. I feel like I maximized the potential I had of my body, and if I wanted to, get better, I had to change the structure of how I move and stuff. So I did a lot of that work in Florida, just a lot of stability work, getting better at getting in and out of cuts and getting open.
With the specific trainer that you hired to help you with that, Can you tell a big difference?
Oh, big difference, and just in the way, even the way I feel, man, like my body, like I just feel a lot better when I move. After a long day of moving, I don't feel as sore because just moving properly.
That was Chig Okonkwo yesterday. We haven't talked a lot about Chig Okonkwo, but there is one thing I gotta get off my chest. I don't see why Chig Okonkwo's earned the benefit of the doubt that everybody seems to want to give him. He's talking about getting with a movement coach. He should get with a catching coach that can work on, the stone hands that he had last season. But he's pinned in as the starting tight end of this football team. Brian Callahan took the job and was like, I actually like the tight ends we have. And I was like, guffaw. Brock Bowers was there. They weren't interested. I'm fine. You go offensive line. I got it. Makes sense. Offensive line was horrible. And it's hard to get tackles and everything else. But everybody just assuming Chig's a varsity guy. I'm like, whoa now. We gave the benefit of the doubt to Chig Okonkwo last season. And last year, he was awful. Awful. His yards per reception, which is a very big stat. That's an explosive play. Went from 14 as a rookie to 9.8. His drops went from 3 to 6. His contested catch percentage. Again, he plays tight end. Think about Gronk, Kelsey, Kittle. Those guys make contested catches. His contested catch percentage went from 63% to 46%. He flunked as a first-year starter. Treylon Burks was put in a similar situation. We gave him the benefit of the doubt, said, okay, Treylon Burks, you go. He flunked too. And the Titans brought in 2 free agent wide receivers. Andre Dillard was brought in to play left tackle. He flunked, and they cut him. But with Chig, every time I bring up my concern about the fact that, man, I do not like what they have at tight end, everyone's like, why are you so worried about Chig? What's wrong with Chig? Did you know that Chig Okonkwo graded out worse at Pro Football Focus last year than Dylan Radins? And so I'm fine when it comes to the whole give the benefit of the doubt. I'm fine with giving the benefit of the doubt to guys who haven't been given an opportunity to prove it. Right? Like Tajay Spears as your number 1 running back or your 1A running back. He's never been given that opportunity. I don't know if Tajay Spears can carry the ball 24 times in a game. Let's see. So I'll give this running back duo that's replacing Derrick Henry, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. There's no guarantee these guys are going to be Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is special. I'm giving Will Levis the benefit of the doubt. I thought Will Levis was fine last year. I thought his line stunk. I thought his receivers weren't very good. I didn't like his offensive coaching staff. But when it comes to Chig, he got that opportunity last year, and he blew it. He was awful. And yet it's like the Titans and the Titans fans just treat him like he's Roger McCreary. Like Roger McCreary is a good player. And Roger McCreary had a nice rookie season. Chig had a nice rookie season. Roger McCreary, given a starting spot, benefit of the doubt, here you go last year, was great. And so I don't have any qualms about Roger McCreary. But what Chig gave you and what McCreary gave you, that's night and day. And yet, again, when I say whoa now to all this, I'm like, I'm not giving this benefit of the doubt. I am skeptical. Then it's like I'm the bad guy. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. Josh says, contested catches are the most important part of being a tight end, especially in the red zone. Jonnu Smith. And I know that Jonnu Smith played on a team with a better offensive line. Jonnu Smith played on a team with A.J. Brown, Derrick Henry. Jonnu Smith had 8 touchdowns in 2020, his last year with the Titans. Chig had 1 touchdown last year. I mean, I agree that I think contested catches are a big tight end stat, but when you get down in that red zone, especially that, you got to throw the ball to the tight end now. Chig had 1 touchdown last year. 1 touchdown. And so, I mean, like, look, I've said that the position that bothers me the most is right tackle. I've talked about that time and time again. I don't think right tackle is a position you can fudge. I think you can fudge it at tight end. And I think the Titans know that, because that's why I think they brought in Tyler Boyd. It was like, hey, these tight windows, these short throws, these, got to have it 3rd and 4s, throw it to Boyd. A lot of young quarterbacks like to throw it to the tight end. Steve McNair like to throw it to Frank Wycheck. Throw it to Boyd. So I think the Titans kind of know that. And so I do think you can kind of fudge it at tight end. But again, Chig get up there and talk about, the vibes are immaculate here. Big bad Vrabel ruining everything. One texter says, is there a getting open coach? Well, in fairness, I do think that the movement, when it came to Chig, I think that is so that he could get open better. But again, for me, there were plenty of times where Chig was open, ball hit him in the hands, he didn't catch it. There was one, I think it was against Tampa Bay, where Chig not only dropped the ball, there was nobody around him, but he dropped it and it fell down and he kicked it because as he's, bungling the catch, the ball goes down to his feet as his feet's, everything's flying around, arms and elbows, and the ball goes 30 yards in the opposite direction because Chig ends up kicking it. I mean, frying pan hands last year. One texter says, it's funny that you say that about Mike Vrabel and his coaching staff. Wasn't it you that kept saying on repeat that things weren't getting fixed and the same bad things kept happening? If Vrabel is a control freak, he's a control freak on both sides of the ball. Let me say this. I said the Titans should nuke the whole thing. To me, and people are going to hate what I'm about to say. And you're going to disagree. And it's okay. You're allowed to disagree with this. For me, the moment where it really hit me about the direction the Titans were going in, and I feel like they've been making bad decisions and chasing bad decisions, though I do think Brian Callahan's got a chance. But the moment for me where it hit me that we were in trouble as Titan fans was 2 days after John Robinson got fired. He got fired on a Tuesday. It was Thursday. And I had spent all day Tuesday, all day Wednesday, trying to figure out what it is John Robinson did. Was he sleeping with the secretary? Was he stealing from the office? Was he, the HR things that get you fired? And it was no, he wasn't doing any of that. They just wanted to go in a different direction. And I put my head in my hands and I said, oh my God. I'm that's what the dumb teams do. Fire the coach or fire the GM in the middle of the season when you're in first place, 7-5, and you have Jacksonville at home that week. And of course, the Titans played like they had a massive distraction, got their rear end spanked by Jacksonville, and voila, lost the division on the last game of the year to Jacksonville. And I said, oh my God. I'm they're little decisions that are made, that are not reversible, but that can be fixed. You let go of Derrick Henry, that could be a bad mistake, but you can go get another running back. This is oh my God, our heads are so far up our tushes, I don't know what's going on here kind of thing. And so from that moment, I felt like the Titans had kept making bad decision after bad decision, throwing good money after bad. Right? They hired Rand Carthon to work with Mike Vrabel when Mike Vrabel didn't want to work with Rand Carthon. That is not setting yourself up for success. If you're committed to Vrabel, then you've got to bring in somebody Vrabel's going to respect. When Vrabel tells you, as is reported in The Athletic, that, no, I think he should be assistant GM, he's never going to respect that guy. So then that's a mistake. So then they fire Vrabel. And again, I take issue with the idea that Vrabel is the root of the problem. That's what I take issue with. I take issue with people that don't think Vrabel's a good coach. Vrabel has his failings. Not a bad coach. But I said, like, hey, clean house. Just start over. Go get a GM, like a guy that's done it before, has got experience, a Mark Dominic, a Thomas Dimitrov, one of those guys. Go get that guy, clean house, start over, let him pick his coach, and go from there. And the Titans instead promoted the assistant GM to president, promoted the GM to executive vice president, and hired a coach. And it's like, oh boy. And so now when you say, well, you said last year that Vrabel was this and Vrabel was that, right? And I thought Vrabel should be fired. But again, the root of the problem is what I'm talking about. And that's, again, it hit me that Thursday after John Robinson got fired that this was where my team was headed. And I hope I'm wrong. And I hope that this new power structure with Brinker above Carthon, but Carthon making decisions above Brinker and Callahan, whatever. I hope that this new power structure works. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they're right. I do. But don't say, oh, yeah, you were all on Vrabel last year. Now you're sitting there saying you don't believe Arden Key I don't believe the idea that Vrabel didn't address issues, which is what Arden Key said. I don't believe that. I don't believe it, and I never will. Not the control freak point fingers that Mike Vrabel was. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Coming up next, there is, I'm going to say it, there is one thing that maybe I will cede the benefit of the doubt on. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Is it a mistake if the Titans do not practice Radunz at right tackle, given that last year he was the best right tackle they had?
Jared, I think they have to practice him there. And if they practice him at guard as well, okay. That's what I did, except I had to practice on both sides of the line and center. At least for Radunz, he'll practice on the right side with his right hand in the ground when he's in a three-point stance. And so but what you said about Nicholas Petit-Frere is the risk. You're right about that. I think that if he stays healthy, he'll have a better season than most people expect this year at right tackle. But the Titans can't count on that. What they do know is that last year, Dylan Radunz at right tackle fought like a crazed pit bull in a junkyard every single play. And he wasn't always good enough, but he fought. I think that the Titans need Dylan Radunz to be ready to go at guard and tackle. And Daniel Brunskill was serviceable at right guard last year. And until Nicholas Petit-Frere proves that he's a solid right tackle, Radunz might be the only next best choice.
Trevor Maddich on our program on Tuesday. Trevor, great insight that I think everybody respects one way or another, except for Paul Kaharski. I did laugh because Joe was like, Trevor was on there pumping Dylan Radunz's tires, and Paul was like, but we care what Trevor Maddich says. He cares what Trevor Maddich says. I was like, and I'll give Joe credit because Joe was pressing back, saying, well, what's wrong with Trevor? Like, Trevor is an expert. And it's like, well, he not college football. He doesn't. Trevor's called NFL games for CBS. What are we talking about? Trevor's as football guy as they get, especially in the trenches. But my guess is Paul doesn't want to cede that Trevor is a good expert because Trevor comes on my show. But I'm scared to death of the right tackle position. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that I am scared to death of right tackle. I've told the story. I'm not going to tell it again. And it's bad when me, somebody who has labeled Dylan Radunz a bust the second the Titans deactivated him for that playoff game against Cincinnati, that when it comes to me, I am super paranoid about the right tackle position. And I don't believe in PT, and I don't believe in Nicholas Petit-Frere, Jalen Duncan. But Bill Polian was on SiriusXM NFL Radio. They were talking about the Titans this offseason. Bill Polian is a Gold Jacket Hall of Famer. Bill Polian, to me, is at the same level, maybe a little bit below, in terms of respect that I have for the GM. And I say that because Bill Polian took over the Colts to draft Peyton Manning. If GM had had Peyton Manning, I think the GM have a gold jacket. But this is what Bill Polian said about Bill Callahan, because a lot of you guys are like, Bill Callahan will fix it. And I'm like, he's not Jesus. Like, there's only so much he can do with bad players. But here's what Bill Polian said on SiriusXM NFL Radio about Big Coach.
One thing I know, with Bill Callahan coaching the offensive line, they're going to play differently, and they're going to be much more efficient than they were previously, simply because he's as good as there is. And there may be some lineup changes. He may shake up that, as Coach Levy used to say, shake up that Pepsi bottle and get a new group that works cohesively with names that right now you don't know.
Okay. Shake that Pepsi bottle away. It's one thing for Johnny Joe in section 318 to text me on the program and say, Bill Callahan will fix it. And for me to say, oh, okay. I mean, these are the same people that thought that Corey Davis was worth like $20 million a year. It is another thing when it is Bill Polian who is saying that. And Bill Polian obviously has all the experience in the NFL, probably knows Bill Callahan real well. And if Bill Polian were to say to me, and not that Bill knows specifically the options that the Titans have, the tools in the toolbox, but if Bill Polian were to come up to me and he were to say, and I were to say, Bill, left tackle, I have my concerns because he's a rookie and they're flipping him, but I think it'll be okay. Left guard, I'll give the benefit of the doubt. He was a rookie last year. The two guys next to him stunk. The coaching stunk. I'm not giving him the excuse in the appendectomy, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Everybody said he was going to be a mauler. Let's see. Okay. The center, I think we can all agree, fine, good. Right guard, I've told you you can fudge it at guard, and between Sadiq Charles and Daniel Brunskill and Dylan Radens and whoever. That one, I'll say, okay, Callahan, fix that. Right tackle. Terrible, and was bad but better than terrible in Radens. That's what they had there last year, and the two guys that Brian Callahan has indicated are going to get a crack at the right tackle spot, terrible and terrible. And the other guy has played 7 NFL games and hasn't started one. Are you sure I can trust Bill Callahan to fix right tackle? Are you sure? And if Bill Polian looked at me and he said, yes, then I would say, okay, then take right tackle off my plate. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to go out to OTAs and see, and not that they're doing this stuff right now, but they will kind of, especially as the minicamp, rolls around, where guys are running off the edge. We saw Arden Key just running past Andre Dillard all the time. And I will say it'll be okay. Bill Callahan will fix it. I'm not a super religious guy. Sometimes I wish I was, because I think that it kind of takes the anxiety away. Like, if you're uber religious and you're somebody who just believes, like, you know what? God's got a plan for me. I think that takes a lot of anxiety away, of worrying about every little thing. If you're like, hey, man, like, the big man's got a plan for me. I mean, I believe in the big man, but at the same time, I'm not like super religious where everything I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. So I kind of sometimes wish I was. But that's what I feel like people are asking me to do about the right tackle spot. And even though I recognize the greatness of Bill Callahan, I'm still like, I've just had so much pain over the last 2 years with the offensive line. It's like, can I really push my chips into the middle? Because last year I made assumptions that the offensive line wasn't going to be as bad as the previous offensive line. I believed last year, and I know Jason Hodeling from Colgate is not the same as Bill Callahan. But I said, okay, fine. You guys want me not to complain about Brewer, so I won't. You guys want me to think that taking a guard at 11 was a good idea, so I'll let it go. Dillard, we'll see. And I made the assumption they'd be better than the line the year before, and they absolutely were not. The Dennis Daly line was better than last year's line. So here I am, rookie left tackle converting from right. Benefit of the doubt of a guy who stunk last year at left guard. Center's good. Right guard, you can fudge it at guard. No right tackle. And you're telling me, just have your faith in Bill Callahan, baby. And I'm like, but if Bill Polian says it, it does mean something to me, because Bill Polian has the skins on the wall. So maybe I'll consider letting go of the anxiety of the right tackle position for right now. But that's just for right now. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Boy, I tell you, my tweet last night about Wyatt Johnston and Logan Stankoven pissed a bunch of people off. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
when he says the Predators draft is trash since 2017, I don't know if that – I think that's an exaggeration because 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, the book is still open. And even, I think, the 2019 draft, we're still not sure what we're getting out of the players. I'm not just talking about the Predators. The entire draft of 2019, those guys are all 22 years old.
Tomasino, Afanasiev, Mark Del Gaizo, Juuso Parssinen.
Yeah, in particular, Tomasino and Parssinen are two very important swing guys. If they take a step forward, those are going to be part of the core going forward, or they're going to be used as trade chips to get you something good on a winning team. That's the way to use these guys, right? But you got to have assets. I'm not giving up on Tomasino and Parssinen. I still think there's a chance that both of those guys become important players in the next few years. They got Heiskanen at 3. They got Jake Ottinger at 26. And this is the big one for me, Jason Robertson in the second round. I don't know. I would love to study the drafts the last 25 years. How many teams got more from their first 3 picks than Dallas got in that? That is a rare trifecta right there. So he's comparing Nashville to a team that I don't know that I don't know that anybody hit it better in one draft in 2017.
That was Willie yesterday, mad at me, saying that, hey, I look at the Dallas Stars and I see Wyatt Johnson and Logan Stankoven scoring in the NHL playoffs as they did last night, and yet the same players the Predators took in the same draft, they're playing in the AHL playoffs. And oh my God, people got mad at me. When I saw Dallas, those two opened the game scoring, I was like, ah! I was like, can't wait for this one. Now, Edmonton ended up kicking that tush, and I'm happy because I'm rooting for Edmonton. But, I mean, when I sent out that tweet, boy, people were mad. Some people, say, hey, our players develop slower. It's okay. Is it? We want to win, folks. We don't want to almost win. Some people say, hey, you should support the Milwaukee Admirals. You know that's not going to happen. The prospects, get better, get your butts to Nashville. The winning and the... But very few. There were a couple. Very few said, man, the Predators need to take a look in the mirror. There were some. And I'm not saying when I look at the fact that the Predators haven't been able to draft anybody who's really helping them except Evangelista from 2017 until now, I'm not saying Barry Trotz needs to go into the scouting department and light a match and fire everybody. But I'm just asking, can we look in the mirror for a second? Is it too much to ask to be a little self-critical? Again, that's why all this boo-hooing about the Admirals drives me crazy. Because just because you're good in the minor leagues does not mean that you'll be good in the major leagues. And that is across every minor league sport. There are guys that are lighting it up in the UFL. They're not NFL players. So when Willie's like, well, I would be patient on Tomasino and I would still give him a chance and I would, no. There's one guy I think has good potential, to be a difference maker, and that's Evangelista. And who's the one guy that was given an opportunity this year and stayed up and stayed in the lineup in a meaningful role the entire season? Evangelista. Tomasino got a shot, sent down to Milwaukee. Parssinen was on a line with Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg, sent down to Milwaukee. I'm done thinking those guys can be anything more than bottom 6 forwards. But Jared, he's only 20. I know. The guys Dallas picked are also young. And those guys are in the NHL playoffs scoring goals. Why are you at home? Why are you at home? Why did you not beat Vancouver? Because you couldn't score enough goals. Your goalie was average. Your defense was fine. You pooped your pants a couple times when you shouldn't. But the problem was you couldn't score. That's why you lost. You lost Game 3 because you could not score. You lost Game 6 because you could not score. So when I have all these people telling me that, oh, no, Jared, it's okay, our players develop slower, I ask you this. Are any of your players in Milwaukee going to be as good as Wyatt Johnston and Logan Stankoven? Are any of your players that are currently in the AHL playoffs, how many of them are actually going to be impact players on the Predators? There's one guy I think that's, I say what, two guys that I think have a chance. Kimmel and LaRue. And I still think LaRue is a third or fourth liner. Now, I'd put him in there over, Cole Smith. But I still think he's like a third or fourth liner. Kimmel might be a first-line player, but he hasn't produced as much. And I am more, hey, let's be aggressive with promoting these prospects.
What about Svechkov?
Not a fan. Again, if these guys were good, they'd be in the NHL. And it's like, well, no, our players don't develop as fast as Dallas's. Right, because Dallas's are better. That's why. Let's look in the mirror. Instead of saying it's okay because our minor league team is good, let's look in the mirror and see, hey, what can we do to draft these players that our division rival who's still playing, who got to the conference final last year, who 3 years ago was right there with us, let's see what they're doing that we can do so that we can get better players just like they are, and then we can beat them. Can anybody ask for that? Or is that too much? Ryan's up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Ryan.
What's up, Jared? No, you're absolutely right. I don't care what people say, complain, and cry about it for. You got to look at David Poyle's drafting, and let's face it, it hasn't been great. He's hit a few here and there, but let's face it, he really has never really drafted well. I mean, let's face it, at one point, the man could have drafted Nikita Kucherov or Braden Point, and he chose players like Salamaki and some no-name player, never made the NHL, over both of them. Poyle has never drafted well, and now it's really hurting this team because they have no top-tier prospects like Dallas, like Carolina, like these teams that are going to the Stanley Cup and winning the Stanley Cup, or at least still playing in the playoffs, because Nashville's still relying on free agents because they have to keep signing new guys to fill out a roster because the prospects aren't ready.
Ryan, I agree with about 95% of what you said. Thank you for your call. About 95%. Look, David Poyle did do some good draft. I mean, when you go with Ryan Suter and Shea Weber, like that is bang, bang, right off the top. But I would agree. That Kevin Fiala pick looks worse and worse by the year. Not only does it look worse, it looks worse that he couldn't play for you and has played, had a career with everybody else. And then on top of it, all the good players that were in that draft. And it's like, God, woof. And it's little things like that. It's the Yakov Trenins that, okay, he's okay. But, like, when we're picking out, we need to get the good players. That's what Dallas is doing. Dallas is getting the good players. And then I'm told that, no, these guys are going to be good. I'm like, if these guys were going to be good, they'd be good now. Tomasino was drafted in 2019. Like, that was 5 years ago. Let's go. Like, it's time to play. Those guys for Dallas, Johnston and Stankoven, they were drafted in 2021, and they're firmly in the NHL. Out there. Is it too much to ask? And then he brought up Poyle. Again, this is, like, they didn't blow up the scouting staff when Barry got in there, and that's why I'm saying, hey, I think we need to look in the mirror a little bit here. 615-737-1025. Will Levis is the guy for now. But is he going to be treated the way that every other first-round quarterback would be treated? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. I do like Charles Davis a lot. I think Charles is a good man. I don't know him very well, but I do think he's a good man. And Corey Curtis does broadcast with him on News 2 for the preseason. And Corey Curtis is like, Charles is the nicest guy there ever was. When he talks about Charles Davis. And so Charles Davis was on SiriusXM NFL radio, and they were breaking down teams, and they were breaking down the Titans. And you hear the way Charles was talking about the Titans. It was like they're going to go win the Super Bowl. So much so that the guy he was working with, Bruce Murray, was like, well, you're close to the Titans, and you do the games. And Charles like, yep, full disclosure. But there is a time to kind of read between the lines when it comes to somebody who's probably saying something, that they believe, but is also with the logo right there on the chest. But then there's sometimes these guys hear things and they repeat them, and that this is really how the team thinks. And that's what takes me to this little nugget, because they were talking about Will Levis and the fact that, hey, Will Levis wasn't a first-round pick. In fact, they took a guard over Will Levis, which I still don't understand. Like, if you're going to risk your career on a quarterback, why would you let the rest of the league draft that quarterback before, in order to take a guard? Like, why would you do that? I understand the Raiders passing on Derek Carr so that they could take Khalil Mack. It's like, yeah, well, we thought this guy might be Lawrence Taylor, so what we did was we took Lawrence Taylor and we risked it on the quarterback, and then we took the quarterback. You took a guard. That doesn't make any sense. But Charles says that the way the Titans view Will Levis, even though he was a second-round pick, that they view him now like a first-round pick.
Rand Carthon able to make a maneuver, right? Make a trade, get into that spot to pick a quarterback that was acknowledged as a first-round pick and get him in the second round. You're exactly right about how you're viewed, but I think in Tennessee, he's viewed as their guy. Doesn't matter whether they got him first, second round. He was their quarterback of the future. They felt great that they could get him in the second round when everyone thought they was going to go in the first. But I don't think they look at him like, oh, well, we got him in the second. It's a totally different ball game. I think they see him as their guy for the upcoming, years in the NFL. So we'll see how that works out.
So he's basically saying they look at him like he's their first-round quarterback that they picked. And I thought to myself, Field Yates said to us at the Super Bowl that it's just a matter of fact that teams will treat a quarterback taken in the first round differently than a quarterback taken in the second round. They will give more rope to the quarterback taken in the first round. It's just the way it is. But Charles is saying, no. He is like a first-round pick to them. Bill Walton, the late, great Bill Walton, Kenny Mayne told a story that he introduced his family to Bill Walton, said, this is my stepdaughter. And Bill Walton stopped him and said, no. That's your daughter. Not your stepdaughter. That's your daughter. And that Kenny Mayne said he never called her his stepdaughter again. And there is a way to view things that aren't technically what they are in that prism. Well, he wasn't a first-round pick, but we're going to treat him like that. But that leads me to ask this question. Are they really going to do that? Are you really going to treat him like a first-round pick? Again, this is a guy who on draft night you valued a guard more than. And just 1 year later, you're ready to say, hey, we're going to treat him like Bryce Young in Carolina. Bryce Young is going to get the full 3 years. He's going to get every opportunity to prove that he is not the guy before they decide he's not the guy. They've already fired one coaching staff. It wouldn't shock me if they fire a second coaching staff in order to try to make Bryce Young the guy because of what they invested in Bryce Young. Now look, number one picks, they bust. It happens. Zach Wilson, see you with the Jets. But again, he got 3 years. They give first-round picks the full 3 years. Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis will get the full 3 years. If Anthony Richardson wasn't the 4th overall pick in the draft, let's say Anthony Richardson was the Colts' second rounder last year. Do you think the Colts wouldn't have re-signed Gardner Minshew after the success they had as close to the playoffs as they got? You don't think they would have kept Gardner Minshew and said, we're going to battle it out? Instead, they let Gardner Minshew go somewhere else because Anthony is our guy. They picked him 4th. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted Kenny Pickett, and Mike Tomlin, who's never developed a quarterback before, whose seat never seems to be hot, he got rid of Kenny Pickett after 2 years. And I thought that was a little quick given the fact that Tomlin saddled him with that terrible offensive coordinator. But again, when it comes to Levis, if you say, you know what, he was our second-round pick, but he's a first-round pick to me. If that's the case, what you're saying is we're giving him the full 3 years. But that's not what I hear around here, right? I hear the Titans spent all this money in free agency by going out and getting Calvin Ridley, by going out and signing Tyler Boyd, by adding Lloyd Cushenberry, drafting J.C. Latham, bringing in Tony Pollard, that they did all of this because we need to see if Levis is the guy this year. That's not giving him the full 3 years. Carolina will give Bryce Young 3 years. Indianapolis will give Anthony Richardson 3 years. Mac Jones got 3 full years. Justin Fields got 3 full years. Zach Wilson, 3 full years. Every now and then, Josh Rosen doesn't. So when Charles Davis says, hey, they made the maneuver, they moved up, they used the 33rd pick on Will Levis, they brought him in there. But even though he was a second-round pick, he's a first-round pick to us. Is he really? Or is this a one-year thing for Levis? Is this hey, we're going to give you the shot this year. We got you a coach. We got you some receivers. We got you a center. We got you a left tackle. It's your game, big boy. Let's see how you do this year. And if the Titans are picking 4th next year, are they going to draft Shedeur Sanders? Are they going to draft Carson Beck? Or are they going to be sitting there at 4 saying, oh, no, we got Will Levis? Because I can promise you this. If Anthony Richardson gets hurt again in Indianapolis and they stink, and they've got the Shedeur Sanders pick or they've got the Carson Beck pick, they're going to trade it. Because Anthony Richardson's getting 3 full years. Maybe more. Bryce Young, he's getting 3 full years in Carolina. I'm telling you, that owner threw his soul in the middle in order to get Bryce Young. He's not just giving it up. And I understand. Not all second-round picks are the same, not all. But when Jalen Hurts was drafted in the second round to Philadelphia, he wasn't drafted to be the franchise quarterback, which is what a first-round quarterback is. He was drafted to back up Carson Wentz. I mean, they hired Nick Sirianni to keep Carson Wentz. They didn't hire him for Jalen Hurts. That's a second-round quarterback. When Jimmy Garoppolo was drafted in the second round of the New England Patriots, he wasn't drafted there to get 3 full years to be the starter and be the guy. And no, they drafted him because they liked him and said, okay, let's develop him behind Brady. And then one day when it's time to move off of Brady, Jimmy could be our guy. But when you drafted in the first round, you get the 3 full years. It is how it is. That's just what they do in the NFL. So when Charles Davis says that, I think to myself, I think Charles Davis is close with Rand. So I hear that and I think to myself, okay, is that something Charles heard from Rand? And he's just repeating it. The idea of, look, I know he was a second-round pick. He wasn't a first-round pick. He was 33rd. He wasn't 31st. Now, 32nd was the second round because Miami got their pick taken away. But he wasn't a first round. But they look at him like a first rounder. If Charles is hearing that from Rand, I ask this. Are they willing to treat him the way that you treat a first round quarterback? Which again, 3 full years? Are they willing to go 4-13? And I don't think they're going to be that bad. I saw John Glennon had a tweet out earlier today that says, according to BetAG.com, the Titans are underdogs in 16 of their 17 games. New England at home is the only game that the Titans are favored in. If they go 4-13, are they going to say, nope, Levis is the guy? Or are they going to pivot off of it? And again, I saw a lot from Levis that I liked in year one. I would have drafted Levis 11th overall. And if I had drafted Levis 11th overall, then he would be getting the 3 full years, and there wouldn't even be a discussion about how much they liked him or didn't like him. But he wasn't drafted 11th overall. A guard was drafted 11th overall. So do they really feel that way? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. The disadvantage that the Titans have by drafting Levis in the second round is they've lost the fifth-year option. And some may say that losing the fifth-year option is probably the reason that the Titans have got to hurry up and make up their mind about Levis. But I'm not sure that's actually the case. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 and your phones. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
we got to fast track this thing. You're not 21, 22, and you have 3 years before we have to pay you. You know, you're 25 years old, and we need to find out if you can do it now. We can't wait. That's why this year, that's why they have surrounded him with the individuals they did. Veteran guys that have been through some stuff in this league, that have played some winning football, that understands. You marry him with a first-year guy, or in Will's case, a second-year guy, but it's really a first-year guy. You try to maximize as much as you can so you will know for sure heading into the next offseason, we don't need another quarterback, because it's not like he's 22, 23. He's been in the league 3 or 4 years by now. We're pushing up against that contract year where we may have to pay him a lot of money or not. You're 25 years old. Time ain't on your side. So we need to figure this out now.
That was D. Mace yesterday saying, hey, it's going to be a this year thing. It's got to be fast-tracked on Levis. And I thought a lot about that. Because somebody told me, I would say his opinion matters. Somebody told me whose opinion matters that, hey, this team, we got to figure it out. Levis doesn't have that fifth-year option. And that sounds like, hey, the Colts with Richardson, they've got 3 more years, whereas you, after this year, have got 2 years. But the idea that the Titans don't have the benefit of the fifth-year option really doesn't matter, because the Titans do have a fifth-year option on Will Levis. It's called the franchise tag. So if the Titans are unsure about Levis after year 4, think about Daniel Jones before he signed that contract with the Giants last year. If the Titans are unsure about Levis, they can tag him. And I did the math, and I compared it to Anthony Richardson. Will Levis's contract is a 4-year, $9.5 million contract. Anthony Richardson's contract was a 4-year, $33.9 million contract. Add in the fifth-year option. I took the fifth-year option of this year at the quarterback position, $25 million, and the franchise tag number at this year, which is $38 million. Now, both will be higher a couple of years from now when the Titans have to make these decisions. But even if that's the case, it's $38 million right now for the quarterback, and it's $25 million right now on the fifth-year option. Richardson, with the $33.9 million plus the $25 million fifth-year option, would be $58.9 million. Levis, at $9.5 million with the $38 million franchise tag, would be $42.5 million. A difference of $16 million. So they would pay $16 million more for 5 years of Anthony Richardson than you will pay for 5 years of Will Levis. Now, again, that number will be thrown off because the franchise tag numbers and the fifth-year option numbers will both go up. But I think they'll probably go up at the same rate. So the idea that you have to make this decision now, I don't think I agree with. I do understand that, hey, they got a new stadium and they're going to want people to buy PSLs and they're going to want to push the envelope. And I get all of that. But the idea they have to make a decision now, why? And that takes me back to, again, the Charles Davis cut of they see him like a first-round quarterback. Well, if you see him like a first-round quarterback, traditionally you're giving him 3 years. And then at the end of 3 years, if you're on the fence, you ride it out. I mean, after 3 years, the Titans were on the fence on Mariota, picked up the fifth-year option. They were still on the fence after year 4. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were on the fence with Jameis Winston after year 5. Their plan going into the 2020 offseason was, we're going to take a run at Tom Brady. We're probably not going to get Tom Brady. He's probably going to re-sign in New England. If he doesn't re-sign in New England, he's probably going to go somewhere else. But we're going to take a crack at Tom Brady. And if we don't get Tom Brady, we'll re-sign Jameis Winston. Well, they got Tom Brady. As the story is told, Jason Light, the general manager, called Don Yee, Tom Brady's agent, and said, hey, we want to kick the tires, see if Tommy would have any interest. And Don Yee said, it's a good thing you called. So when it comes to Levis, you don't have to make your mind up unless you've decided that, nope, we're going to know this year. But if you're treating him like a first-round quarterback, you're not going to do that. Because I guarantee you Carolina is not thinking about kicking Bryce Young out after this year. Not with all they've invested. Chicago has a second-round pick in next year's draft that belongs to Carolina because Carolina wanted Bryce Young so bad. Indy's not kicking out Anthony Richardson. I don't care if Anthony Richardson gets hurt. But I could see the Titans. This comes back to the difference between the second-round pick and the first-round pick thing. That if he's a second-round pick and you're thinking, oh, well, now we can go get Shedeur Sanders. Oh, now we can go get Carson Beck. Then you're treating him like a second-round pick. If you're doing what Derek says, you're treating him like a second-round pick. Again, the fifth-year option for you is the franchise tag. You can use it. If you're not sure, you pay him the franchise tag, and on you go. Like, if I was the Dolphins, I wouldn't even, I mean, are you sold on Tua? $50+ million a year is what it's going to take to sign. Are you sure? Are you sure? You sure you can win with him? You don't ever win any big games with him and he doesn't stay healthy. Are you sure? I'm not. You know, it's one thing if you've got Joe Burrow, but most quarterbacks aren't Joe Burrow. I mean, I would argue that Jacksonville, and I would give Trevor Lawrence the contract if I was Jacksonville, even though I'm not a huge Trevor Lawrence fan. But I would argue that even Jacksonville's not sure if they've got the guy or not. So I don't think you're for sure going to know if Levis is your guy or not after this year. I hope you do. The way Kansas City knew after Mahomes after year 2, the way Baltimore knew about Lamar after year 2. I hope. The way Buffalo knew about Josh Allen after year 3, like, I hope. But I'm not completely committed to that, especially if, as they said, as Charles Davis said, they're treating him like a first-round pick. 615-737-1025. Your phones are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com here on the program. If you want to weigh in, one texter into the text line says, Jared, how many times do we have to tell you that Rand told you? Rand all but came out and said that last year's first-round pick was all Vrabel, and what if it was? Can you not accept that? Can you let it go? Especially if this team is great. And I said back to the texter, I said, when did he say that? When did he say that Skoronski was Vrabel's pick? Because I didn't catch that. Connor, have you heard that? Did Rand say that Skoronski was Vrabel's pick?
No, I haven't heard that.
The only thing I heard was they asked Rand in that ball didn't bounce our way press conference. They asked him about Skoronski playing left tackle, and he was like, I'll say this. Whatever, I wouldn't count Peter out against anything. He didn't say I didn't pick him. The texter replies, when he said, this is really like my first year as GM. You're an expert at reading between the lines. Don't be blind on this one just because it doesn't match your narrative. Well, I thought that this is my first year as GM. I thought that was total bullcrap. And if that's the case, if last year didn't count, which it did, but if last year didn't count, just going off of that assumption, if last year didn't count, then Rand didn't draft Will Levis. And if Rand didn't draft Will Levis, I can guarantee you he's not going to treat him like a first-round pick. The NFL is loaded with what I call MGS, my guy syndrome. My guy, I guarantee you, Sean Payton will accept things from Bo Nix that he would not accept from Russell Wilson because his ass is on the line with Bo Nix. He will accept that. One texter said, I asked this yesterday at the end of the show, but the cut you played of Shereen Williams saying if the Titans are 1-3, that they will pull the plug with Will Levis and move on to Mason Rudolph. Do you agree? And if not, what would the record need to be for you to pull Will Levis, or do you want him to have the 3 full years? That comes from Caleb. I don't think they're going to pull him for Mason Rudolph. I certainly don't think they're going to do it in the first month. If you're 1-3, they're not going to pull the plug. That's the first month. I mean, the Titans would have to go 2-15 for me to think that at some point along the way, Mason Rudolph's going to be in there barring an injury. Because these guys have pumped up Levis too much. The owner has pumped up Levis too much. They've pumped up the quarterback too much that to sit there and admit midway, oh, my God, this is a total disaster and a total failure. I mean, that is whew. Joey from Bellevue says Derek Carr was a second-round pick. If someone would say that Levis would have the same type of career as Carr, would you take it and make him the franchise quarterback? Joey says he wouldn't take that. I agree. I would not. I need better than Derek Carr. I'm not a big Derek Carr fan. You know, I would use Jared Goff as the example, too. If Will Levis's career is equal to that of Jared Goff's, where Jared Goff is not a force multiplier. If he's on a bad team, he's not going to make them better. But if he's on a good team, he can get you to the Super Bowl. So if you were to tell me that Will Levis, I can settle right now out of court for Jared Goff's career, would I take it? And I'd say no, because my hope is that Levis can become the force multiplier that Josh Allen is. Now, look, Josh Allen hadn't won anything big either. I hear people talking about how, oh, this is so great for the Titans, the way they're building their team now as opposed to building it around Derrick Henry because you can't win with a running back. You can win a little, but you can't win championships with a running back. I'm like, can you win championships with Josh Allen? Because Josh Allen's gotten just as far as Derrick Henry. Haven't seen him in the Super Bowl. Haven't seen Lamar Jackson in the Super Bowl. Oh, you can win that way. Now, if the Titans had just had a little bit better defense in that AFC title game and not committed a massive hold right there before halftime, and they might have had a shot building a team around Derrick Henry. Again, I don't think you're going to win a lot of championships doing that, and I would prefer to build around a quarterback, but come on now. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Coming up next, Caroline says, I hate college football. She accuses me of this all the time. Now, I think that's not fair because I sit down on Saturdays and I watch the games. But there is this massive trend in college football. And deep down inside, I'm not sure anybody cares. And I really mean that. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
where's the line, I guess, in determining if they are employees? Are you guys, everybody writing players checks? Is what's happening? Are they tax deductible? What are the logistics of it that define whether they're employees or not? And how are you actually giving them this money?
The settlement is not done. There's a lot there. So there are, let's just unpack elements of the question. So there is a Johnson versus the NCAA case. There are NLRB issues. There's the Dartmouth matter. I think there's another filing around the Ivy League that relate to employment. What I said is not mutually exclusive of what's being done. Our student athletes have not asked me, whether it's in campus conversations, individual conversations, campus conversations with groups, or the councils we've talked about, that being an employee is on their mind. What was the rest of the?
How do you pay them? How are they paid?
Well, it's not done, right?
So if they're getting paid, aren't they employees? I guess I'm just confused.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, there are people who are paid who are not employees in this world.
That was Greg Sankey at the SEC meetings in Destin. So Caroline has accused me of hating college football over the years. And not to say that I resent her thinking that, I just don't think that's true. I mean, I spent over $1,000 to watch my own team play in a meaningless bowl game this year. And I love a big SEC game. The ones that used to be on CBS. Number 6 Georgia and number 8 Auburn. And, Saturday afternoon, though I don't know if they're going to play them Saturday afternoon or Saturday night now with the big SEC games. But I love a big SEC game. But maybe she is right in this sense. I do not care about the minutia that is now going on in college athletics with all the paying the players and this rule and that rule and the courts agreements here and the settlement there and call me on August 31st when we kick the football off. I will be on my couch with my remote and I will turn on the TV. That's where I will be. I have a completely subdued opinion about this just complete and total nuking of amateurism over the years that has transpired over the last week with what I believe, and I believe I have the most popular, I guess, the most pervasive opinion on this. Who cares? Who cares? This was landmark settlement, pay players, who cares? When I sit down on the couch and I click on the TV, I don't care who's paid what. Let's play some football. And I really feel like I don't want to say speak for everybody, but I think I speak for most people. We just want to watch games. We don't want to be bothered. I remember when I was on the radio in Louisville, and I said this when I was on the radio Wednesday in Louisville, and I really believe this. And I said this 10 years ago when I was there. And I said, Louisville Cardinal fans, Kentucky Wildcat fans, Tennessee Volunteer fans, Vanderbilt Commodore fans, they're the same as Dallas Cowboy fans, Tennessee Titan fans. On Sunday, you sit down, you turn on the TV, you watch Cowboys. Let's go Cowboys. Saturday, you sit down, you turn on the TV. How about them balls, baby? You don't care about these kids going to school. You never cared about these kids going to school. I was in school and didn't care about the kids going to school. So this idea now that, first it was NIL and now you can pay the players and now Dabo Swinney's like, oh, I don't want to do that. And it's like, okay, fine. But I remember growing up when a dude would take money, Derrick Rose at Memphis and all of that garbage. And I used to be like, oh, bad guy. Now, I don't care. I didn't care when they introduced NIL. I was like, fine, pay the players. I don't care. It was like the FBI had that big basketball case. They got Rick Pitino fired, and it was like $100,000 for a player. But then, like a year after that, everybody was like, who cares? It's like smoking pot. I remember when Honey Badger used to smoke all that pot and get suspended at LSU, and it was like, Honey Badger, how dare you? Now, I see an NFL player get arrested for marijuana. I think a Chiefs player got arrested a couple weeks ago for possession of marijuana. I'm like, who cares? Nobody cares. That's how I feel about paying the players in college sports. Who cares? Now, I'm not saying, like, who cares in the sense of, like, who cares about college football? Tons of people care about college football. Like, I'm not saying who cares the way that I say who cares about the UFL, or who cares the way I say who cares about the Milwaukee Admirals. I'm just saying who cares about how the players get paid? Who cares if it's the boosters with NIL and Nico through the Spire Sports gets $8 million, or if, they're writing a check right there in the office? I don't care. Does the school pay him? Does the NIL pay him? Does the boosters pay him? Is there a cap? Is it a free-for-all? As long as I don't have to pay them, and I won't, I don't care. I'm still going to sit my fat ass on the couch this fall and watch college football. And in March, I'll watch college basketball. And I'll watch women's basketball. And I'm not going to sit there and say that I care how this person got paid or how that person got paid. I don't care if it's out of an ATM machine. I don't care if it's a check, a wire transfer, and I don't care if it's in a McDonald's bag, like the way Dan Patrick accused Jeremy Pruitt of doing all those years ago. I don't care. And I really believe that, again, this minutia of, what does the National Labor Relations Board say? I think most people, most fans like me, don't care. Can you pay the players? Yes? Okay, go ahead, pay them. How are we paying them? I don't care. What time are we kicking off at? 11? All right, kick the ball off. 1st and 10. Let's go, baby. That is all I care about. And I think that's that's most of America. But what's going to happen is, because this is a daily thing for the coaches, like this is a daily thing, they are all going to get up there, SEC media days, and bitch. Like, they are going to complain. I remember we did the show this year at SEC media days because it was in Nashville. Last year, the 2023 SEC media days. We did it because it was in Nashville, and so that's what we did. And I remember the Titans signed DeAndre Hopkins on Sunday, and SEC Media Days was on Monday, and I told Caroline that Sunday, I'm like, I'm not talking SEC football. I'm like, my audience driving home in the afternoon wants to hear about DeAndre Hopkins. They do not care about South Carolina secondary. And so I got there, and we talked DeAndre. And Greg McElroy was booked on our show through ESPN. Greg sat down. I looked at Greg. I said, we're going to talk DeAndre Hopkins. He said, okay. And so the whole week I was there, I was like, I'm only going to talk about things I think people care about. So when Greg Sankey came on the show, I talked about, like, who cares about how they pay him? Every single one of those coaches was going up to the podium to complain about NIL. These coaches would get up there and talk about how, we got to get state legislation, and, we've got to get this and we've got to get that. And, the big college football junkie guru sites and shows and things like the Birmingham station, or the show that used to be on the Birmingham station, they were like breaking it all down, being like, Lane Kiffin said this today about NIL. And I'm like, what do I care what Lane Kiffin thinks? Lane Kiffin can't affect any of this. Now, if you were to have like a Supreme Court justice get up there, whose opinion does matter in the paying the players cases, and you were to have he or she, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she's up there. And it's like, all right, that's a press conference that might matter as far as paying the players is concerned. What Lane Kiffin says, who cares? He doesn't have any power to change any of this. So who cares what he thinks? And Greg Sankey, we need to have legislation that stands in there that keeps this from being a free-for-all. Like, I want to hear this from Greg Sankey, who's strong-arming ESPN right now and using the Tennessee-Alabama rivalry as a bargaining chip to try to get more money. All Greg Sankey's ever cared about is what goes in his pocket. He wants legislation that will keep the money coming to him and not forcing him to give it to the players. That's all he cares about. Well, I don't care about any of that. So college sports, what it used to be back in the day of, can you believe this story that, what was it? Was it Eddie Sutton at Kentucky? I can't remember who the coach was, with the Western Union envelopes. Calipari paid this player. It's legal. And how you get it, I don't care. It's like these people that are breaking down Caitlin Clark's earnings. So, Caitlin Clark's only making $55,000 from the WNBA, but she's making $20 million from State Farm and Nike. I don't care. Now, in sports with real caps, like hockey, I care. Because now it's like, we only got X amount of dollars to spend, and we're spending $8 million on you, and you stink. That I care about. But as far as, again, this, are they going to be labeled employees, and then the taxes, and are the players going to have to pay taxes, and are the universities going to be allowed? I don't care about that. The one thing that I do care about, and this is probably because my school's in the ACC, and the ACC is probably going to blow up here at some point. The one thing I do care about is if the schools can pay the players directly, then shouldn't Vanderbilt be no worse than the 32nd best college football team in the country? Because the SEC and the Big Ten has more money than everybody. So if we're allowed to pay these players directly from the schools, and I think you are, then shouldn't Vandy, with all their money, be able to buy a better team than, say, a traditional football power like Florida State? Because Vandy in the SEC is making $1 gazillion more than Florida State in the ACC. That's why Florida State's suing the ACC. That's why Florida State wants to get out of the ACC. So if Vandy can pay their players significantly more than Florida State, then shouldn't they be better than Florida State? And yet there's something about all of this that makes me think Vandy's not going to be better than Florida State. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. But again, all the constant, these headlines and the, Pete Thamel reports, I'm like, who cares? That I don't care. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. Stillman and Company. So the news today, the Chicago Bears have been selected for HBO's Hard Knocks for training camp. The Bears announced on Thursday. The Bears have never been featured on Hard Knocks, which has followed NFL teams during training camp since 2001. Chairman George McCaskey has long been opposed to allowing HBO access to the Bears as they prepare for the season opener, and said that his stance on appearing on the program had not changed during the league meetings in March. However, the Bears don't have a choice because the Bears don't make the playoffs, and on top of not making the playoffs, they don't have a new head coach. So the Chicago Bears will be on Hard Knocks. Let me say this. As somebody, I kind of find Hard Knocks boring because it's kind of the same show every year. You know, there'll be some colorful personalities here and there, but it's kind of all the same. Like, it's kind of, you know, they'll follow around the best player a little bit and the head coach, and they'll show him in his office, and the GM, and they'll show him cutting guys, and it'll always be something like, well, Caleb Williams may be the number 1 pick. Things may not be as easy for 7th round pick Rodrigo Johnson. And then it shows the guy, Johnson, you're out of position every damn time. What are you doing? It's like it's the same every time. And then the guys talking to Hard Knocks. Yeah, it's really hard coming from East West Lafayette State. You know, we're trying to, I've seen it and I know it is. But because the Titans are playing the Bears week 1 this year, it might be fun to watch Hard Knocks and sit there, and so we'll know some of the Bears players and what's going on with the Bears and what's up with Caleb Williams. And I mean, I actually feel like I have a reason this year to watch Hard Knocks. It kind of reminds me of the offseason before the Titans played the Browns in 2019 to start the season, when the Browns had signed Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, and they had all the hype, and it was like there was always a new Browns story coming out every week, and it mattered to us because Titans played them week 1. So that is at least a little exciting. Tomorrow, Vandy baseball on the air at 11. We don't know what time that NCAA tournament game will end, so we don't know what time we'll be on. But we will have the TD Power Hour and more tomorrow. That'll be at 4 o'clock. Stillman and Company. We will see you tomorrow after the Vandy game. 102.5, 106 for the game.